Munir Safieldin to Uganda. The First Lady assured him of the Education Ministry's continued cooperation with UNICEF to ensure education for every child in Uganda. Mrs. Museveni said that the Education Ministry has been working with UNICEF on many programs for a long time in a very cordial environment. She hopes this relationship will be strengthened furthermore. The UNICEF country representative was accompanied by his deputy Shadrach Omolo and Rosemary Rugambwa Rwanyange, UNICEF's education specialist responsible for quality education. The UNICEF country representative, Dr. Munir Safieldin, said that engagement with the Ministry of Education has been one of the priorities from the day UNICEF came to Uganda, and it will continue to be. Dr. Munir said that UNICEF will invest close to $56 million in the education sector in the coming 5 years to implement its new 5-year country program, which he said is fully aligned with the National Developmental Plan of Uganda. Now, the new country representative expressed UNICEF's excitement following the affirmation from His Excellency the President with regard to pre-primary education, saying this decision sends the right message across the globe about the commitment for education in Uganda. He also pledged their continued support to the universal primary education and said they will specifically work with the Education Ministry team to bring children who drop out of school back to the classrooms.
Specific outcomes and planned results in the National Development Plan of Uganda. $1 million in the education sector.
I should be confident that at any time we can discuss anything. So I am so grateful that you could provide the time to come and we meet briefly.
Now, there will be a special sitting at Parliament tomorrow, Tuesday, as Uganda Parliament marks 100 years of existence since 1921. The first sitting in 1921, that comprised of only 7 members, was presided over by Robert Cook under the Legislative Council. In commemoration of the 100 years, Parliament has organised minimal activities to be undertaken in line with COVID-19 preventive measures. These will include, among others, a special seating. The Speaker of Parliament, Rebecca Kadaga, says the activities to mark the day have been minimised for safety reasons, but Parliament shall organise major activities at a later date.
Of course, as I indicated, in the beginning, the Africans were not represented, but progressively, the Ugandans have been able to take charge of their affairs, running 3 elections during all that time. The numbers were smaller, but at the moment, from 7 members in 2021, we have gone to 459 members, and the next parliament will be 529 members. So it has really grown, and we have taken charge of our affairs. We no longer have people speaking on our behalf. We're no longer spectators. We're here doing the work of Parliament. That's why we thought we should celebrate this centenary. However, we had big plans to have activities lasting about a week, but we can't gather many people, as you know. So we decided that tomorrow we shall have a motion in Parliament, and then wait maybe for a year to see how the COVID situation pans out, to enable us to have a national celebration of the 100 years of the legislature. So we wanted you to join us in marking this landmark. This is a milestone, and we have moved far from where we started.
Meanwhile, the former leader of opposition in Parliament, Professor Maurice Ongenga Latigo, has called for establishment of a lower parliament to make easy the legislation process. Latigo, who expresses worry over what will become of the 11th parliament, wants Uganda to emulate the Kenyan side and introduce the Senate alongside National Assembly. Latigo's proposal comes at a time the country is celebrating 100 years of legislation, a journey he says has not been a sail in the pack.
She may be weak and unable to walk on her own, but the mark she left in Uganda's legislative history will always remain dotted. When we did an interview with her in 2017, she was due to celebrate her birthday in November of that year, when she would turn 100. Florence Alice Lubega was the first female member of parliament. She joined the Legislative Council in 1957 and later the Independent Parliament in 1962, an experience she recounts.
Uganda was a big one, very Britain. Then independence. I was the only woman in parliament.
The legislative process at the time is said to have been progressive until the 1966 crisis. Prime Minister Dr. Apollo Milton Obote fell out with the Kabaka of Buganda, Sir Edward Mutesa II. Professor Maurice Ongenga Latigo, whose kinsmen wrote Matayo Lamott and Antonio Poa were part of the Legislative Council, attests to this.
At independence, the legislatures of Uganda were no different from those of the UK. The opposition argued their case, the government side argued their case, and the best ideas got taken and used nationally.
Professor Latigo, who joined the Ugandan Parliament in 2001, says the country's legislature has not strove to go back to the old standards. To him, this has disadvantaged the locals that entrust MPs with their mandate.
From the 1995 Constitution, we have had at least 4 parliaments. In my own view, the parliament that came in as a movement parliament in '96 had the kind of people that represented the past.
The first leader of opposition since the return to multi-party politics in 2006 recounts the situation of the 1970s. There was no parliament during the presidency of Idi Amin, underscoring the need to learn from history.
That element that whatever we do, we must reflect on the past and consider the future and make sure that we learn from the past and build a better future for our country.
Professor Latigo expresses worry over what will become of the next parliament, whose quality he has reservations for.
The challenge is bigger than parliament. What you see is reflective of even the electorate. Ask yourself, what kind of electorate would, for example, tell me, Honorable Professor Latigo, because I brought them electricity, the electorate says we don't eat electricity.
He wants establishment of what he describes as a lower parliament to enable quality and mature debates.
My big fear is that unless we sit down again as a country, like Kenya has repeatedly done, go through a constitutional process and work out how to review what our legislature is supposed to be about. what is the appropriate number that constitutes effective representation. And if need be, do like they have done in Kenya. Create another level, just like the UK as House of Lords, like the US as a Senate. Create another level where the lower legislature can then get checked and there will be a balance.
These assertions come at a time Uganda is celebrating 100 years of legislation, with the Legislative Council recorded to have been established in 1921. Henry Okrut, UBC.
Yeah.
Now, domestic workers under the umbrella Domestic Workers Association of Uganda have asked Parliament to speed up the process of passing the Employment Amendment Bill 2019. While petitioning the Speaker of Parliament, Rebecca Kadaga, the workers narrated the violence surrounding their work environment due to unregulated and non-law-bound professions.
We present our petition to you, Madam Speaker, in support of the Employment Amendment Bill 2019, and also seek the indulgence of your office to speed up the process of passing the bill into law.
It is said that domestic workers have continued to face all forms of abuses ranging from sexual harassment, discrimination, marginalization and exploitation, among others. Such forms of abuses happen because domestic work is not recognized and bound by the law.
The domestic work sector of Uganda for long has not been legally recognized and regulated. The current provisions of the Employment Act 2006 cannot adequately promote and protect the rights of domestic workers.
A 2017 survey by Domestic Workers Association of Uganda shows that 27% of workers faced emotional abuses like demeaning names, 15% reported physical abuse, 14% were subjected to sexual abuses, while 8% reported unlawful termination of contracts and dismissal. The absence of regulation on domestic work sector has not only caused the image of domestic workers, but has also left them vulnerable to unfair working conditions.
Abakozi bawako banga tukolera sente ntono mitale 3-5 ekinene nnyo.
The bill will be handled as quickly as possible. I understand by today they were either in a retreat concluding, so we shall give it priority because we support better work relations, better industrial relations. But what is most important is that you have demystified what a domestic worker is.
It's against this backdrop that domestic workers petitioned the Parliament to speed up the passing of the Employment Amendment Bill to regulate domestic work. Speaker of Parliament Rebecca Kadaga is concerned why some members have over time sabotaged the bills like the minimum wage bill that would also come into play to protect domestic workers from underpayment.
The issue of getting 30,000 shillings a month, I'm in shock because 30,000 shillings, so how does one survive? But also it brings back to the point of the minimum wage. As Parliament, we had enacted the law on minimum wage in this country. But the ministers went to Cabinet and campaigned against it. They campaigned against it. So now we don't have minimum wage. That's why I paid 10,000, others have paid 5,000, others nothing.
The employment bill that seeks to protect workers from exploitation was tabled by Workers MP Agnes Kunihira, but is yet to see the light. Susan Naung and Gloria Gwitabinji reporting for EBC TV.
Now, the Uganda Police Force has embarked on investigations over the feared and projected domestic terror in different parts of the country. It follows a double attack on different petrol stations and the arrest of one Kalisa Daniel over forging bomb assembling. This was unveiled by police spokesperson Fred Enanga while addressing the media.
After the double attack on petrol stations of Gayaza and Sekanyonyi, police have launched investigations in what appears to be an organized crime.
It appears to have been an attempt targeting petrol stations with a motive particularly of causing probably collateral damage to the vicinity. The fact that the methods used are similar would actually make us consider this as some form of organized crime.
In relation to the feared domestic terror, police have arrested a one Kalisa Daniel over possession of engineered petrol bombs in Nibuyukwe district. According to police, there are some organized perpetrators of peace.
During the subsequent search that we conducted at the premises, we recovered the device. It had an ITEL phone that was connected to it. And we also recovered the Samsung phone, 2 duplicate national IDs, and also materials also on how to wage war. The connected phone, upon the preliminary assessment by the bomb experts, had some means of initiation whereby you could it would trigger the device from a particular place.
Police are also in possession of one Julius Masanja, a teacher at Hope Primary School in Kisugu, over aggravated development of a 13-year juvenile.
Alleged to have offered extra lessons in terms of coaching during the period of the lockdown. So this young girl of 13 would always go to his home, which is found in Kalina Zone, Wabigalo in Kisugu. And that is where he took advantage of the opportunity to defile the victim. And upon further examination, it was established that this girl is pregnant for this same teacher.
In other security matters, Kawempe North Constituency Member of Parliament-elect Muhammad Seglinya was arrested for organizing an illegal demonstration in the central business of Kampala.
He was arrested around Mini Price trying to protest and inciting violence. He has been, of course, taken to CPS where he is currently detained, and we are to record his statement on allegations of inciting violence. We have only zeroed on him alone. There are, of course, others, but we have zeroed on him alone.
Other investigations by Uganda police include a tragedy which claimed 3 ladies in Rubaga division who were set on fire. The Criminal Investigations Directorate is investigating this matter. Abdul Nasir, Lubwama, UBC News.
A General Court Martial in Machindye has charged and remanded Rubaga North Councillor-elect James Mubiru for unauthorized wearing of military uniform, charges he denies. Due to the ongoing investigation into the matter, the accused has been remanded to Machindye Military Barracks.
James Mubiru, Rubaga North Councillor-elect, who was allegedly announced dead on different social media platforms prior to his disappearance, was Monday afternoon arraigned before General Court Martial, led by Lieutenant General Andrew Guti. Before court, Mubiru was charged with one offense of wearing a red beret, which is a monopoly of the defense forces and likely to cause confusion. However, the accused pleaded not guilty to the alleged offense.
The person subject to military law by virtue of section 119, subsection 1, para 8 and sub-para 2 of the Interim Act. Statement of offense. Unauthorized wearing of uniform, contrary to section 164, subsection 1, para B of the Interim Act 2005.
According to our sources who managed to attend the court session, where journalists and lawyers to the accused were denied access, the army prosecutor led by Ambrose Baguma told the court that investigations are still ongoing. Baguma asked court, due to the security concerns, the accused James Mubiru be remanded to military police barracks in Machindi.
This is not the first time General Court Martial has continuously refused lawyers from accessing court, even after getting communication that is here. we have not been able. We came with family members, we came with our sureties. Unfortunately, we have not been given access to see him.
On this, court remanded the accused to meet at a police barracks in Machindi until 13th April 2021, when his case will resume for mention. Prosecution alleges that on 18th November 2020, in Nankulabye, Kampala City, James Mubiru was found wearing a red beret with the intention to cause confusion. Sources add that James Mubiru was represented by Major Commander Cyrus Mutungi. On State Brief,
we are sure of one thing: whatever they are doing is infringement of someone's rights. We shall, one, petition court; two, we shall pass through Uganda Law Society to see that at least we harmonize all that. We presented our cards today from the Uganda Law Society, but still they have disallowed us from entering.
Following his arrest over the weekend, news went viral on social media that James Mubiru was reportedly dead, and several of his supporters were seen at his parents' home mourning him. James Mubiru is not the first person to be charged in the General Court Martial on charges of wearing red berets and uniforms resembling those of the Defence Forces. Deborah Namamonde, UBC News.
And the Nabagereka of Buganda has urged Ugandans to take part in conserving and protecting of the environment for better livelihoods and socio-economic development. The Nabagereka's call comes amidst data from NEMA indicating 64% disappearance of wetlands in Uganda, which is 3 times the rate of forest loss which is human-induced.
It's a gift to you to thank you for
all aware that plastic industry generates billions of tons of carbon pollution every year, which is the main contributor to global warming and the cause of climate change. In addition, the increased plastics entering our water bodies is both a health hazard and dangerous for our ecosystem.
Uncontrolled degradation and conservation to other types of land use are threatening Uganda's forests and climatic conditions. This is influenced by the increasing human needs, agriculture expansion, and environmentally harmful mismanagement. Putting this in context, the Water and Environment Week 2021 kicked off with a collective voice calling for action against water and environmental degradation and plastic pollution in the country. Among the public figures that call for action is the Queen of Buganda, the Nabagereka, the UN representative, the Minister of Water and Environment, implementing partners, among others. However, speaking at the launch, the Nabagereka expressed concern about the plastics choking the environment, saying that pollution through plastics is a very big challenge that needs to be addressed with urgency.
All aware that plastic industry generates billions of tons of carbon pollution every year, which is the main contributor to global warming and the cause of climate change. In addition, the increased plastics entering our water bodies is both a health hazard and dangerous for our ecosystem. The floating plastic bottles and other plastic waste that clog the rivers indicate how poor plastics disposal destroys the environment. And the question is, which has also been asked by other speakers, how can we address that high output and use of plastics in Uganda?
The annual Water and Environment Week is an event that brings all stakeholders in water and environment sector to discuss and express ideas on issues affecting the water and environment. The Minister of Water and Environment, Honorable Beatrice Anywa, called for collective collaboration to address environmental challenges and revealed that the environmental law has been reviewed.
Has in addition imposed producer extended responsibilities as part of the polluter pay principles. This will ensure that producers of all materials with potential to pollute will have the duty to follow the management of their product
through its life cycle.
The minister disclosed that more than 600 tons of plastics is disposed of every day. The country has a number of inland freshwater bodies that have been contaminated with plastic litters, in addition to pollution in the drainage systems in and around towns, all due to the rapid growth and urbanization. Ministry of Water officials, together with Nabagereka, met a team of the Flip-Floppy Expedition, the world's first ever recycled plastic sailing boat that have been moving around East African countries, creating awareness on the dangers of plastics in the environment. Zahara Abigaba, UBC.
Meanwhile, new statistical figures from the Ministry of Health indicate that Chibale district loses 5 people every day to malaria. The same statistics indicate that Chibale district has a high prevalence rate of 18%, with 3,000 malaria cases reported every month. In the fight to scale down the shocking prevalence rate in the district, the Ministry of Health has embarked on a plan to distribute mosquito nets to contain the situation. Let's take a look.
Malaria is a problem in several areas of the world, but mainly a challenge around the equator. Africa continues to carry a disproportionately high share of the global burden due to the natural green vegetation surrounding the continent, which also serves as a breeding ground for the female Anopheles mosquito that spreads malaria. Uganda is ranked 6th among African countries with high related mortality rates. Ministry of Health has put in place robust distribution of mosquito nets to curb the spread of malaria. The most affected is Chibale district, where 5 people are lost to malaria on a monthly basis. Top on agenda in the campaign to distribute mosquito nets is Chibale district.
Bunyoro sub-region is one of the areas of our major focus because it is also a watershed. It's a very green place with very conducive climate for mosquitoes. We would like to make sure all people within Bunyoro receive mosquito nets and they use it.
Dr. Godfrey Tindhura is the Chibale district health officer who asserts that majority of patients received at health centers are malaria cases.
And every month we receive about 3,000 cases of malaria. Currently the health facilities are not enough. As I said earlier, we have around 26 facilities, both private and public, but out of those only 6 of them are public.
Karuka Shaija, the deputy RDC, says the district has put in place stringent intelligence to bring to book those that will sell mosquito nets.
We have been monitoring those who are planning to do the stealing of these mosquito nets. We have deployed our personnel on the ground. They will be arrested.
But what do the beneficiaries of mosquito nets say about the exercise?
In the back, I have been suffering from malaria by mosquitoes very much. But now I'm saved and I'm appealing to all the people who are going to get nets to take it as an important thing.
Mfunye mosquito net yenu, mfunye sanyu lingi kubanga sigenda kufuna obulwadde bwa malaria.
Helen Barbara Jizamba reporting for ABC News.
With that, we take a quick break. We return with more details. This is News Tonight.
Kapo, you seem to be in a hurry. Where are you going to?
I'm going to pay URA visit.
But you can access URA online. Why pay a visit?
To know more about the Kakasa business solutions, namely digital tracking solution, the voluntary disclosure program and electronic fiscal receipting and invoicing solution, which have turned my business around. You know I need to be on top of my game to protect my empire. If you know, you know.
I too need to know what Kapo knows.
Kakasa, be sure you are in charge of your business. Uganda Revenue Authority, developing Uganda together.
Beyond beauty
Beauty Parlor and Spa, your beautification destination. We believe in suitable beauty. We offer pedicure and manicure, makeup, hairstyling, plating, weaving, dreadlocks, massage, waxing, facial and body scrub, name it. We also offer additional services like honeymoon packages, hiring venues and vehicles for brides and grooms, training interns from different beauty schools. We are located on Uganda House, ground floor 5. Call to book for your appointment on 0702 645 015 or 0414 696 229. You can WhatsApp us on 0752 645 005.
Wait.
No one should stop you from finishing what's yours. That's why MTN gives you data bundles that don't expire. Load MTN Freedom Bundles using My MTN app and enjoy the freedom to finish your data bundles.
MTN. Parliament of Uganda will mark 100 years of legislation on Tuesday, 23rd March 2021. On this day, Parliament shall debate a motion for a resolution of Parliament to recognize its achievements over the years. The precursor of the present-day Parliament of Uganda was the Legislative Council, LEGCO, established by the British Colonial Office. The LEGCO held its first meeting on Wednesday, 23rd March 1921 at the Government House in Entebbe and thereafter at the Town Hall, now KCCA headquarters, before moving to the current home at the Parliament Building in 1962 upon Uganda attaining independence. The public is invited to follow the day's proceedings that will be broadcast live. This message is brought to you by the Clerk to Parliament.
Kwatesimu! For the first time in Uganda, you can pay in installments and own a smartphone instantly. Get to own the Samsung A3 Core, Samsung A01 or Samsung A11 and pay back in either daily, weekly or monthly installments for a period of a year. To check if you're eligible for the offer, dial *284*49# today. You also enjoy free 500 MB on the purchased phone every month for the entire loan repayment period. Ha! Uganda nyuma! Airtel, the smartphone network, in proud partnership with MasterCard, Samsung and Asante Financial Services.
Today tastes like a new tradition, like an old favorite. Tastes like all hands on deck and all eyes on the prize. Today tastes like a piece of the action. And it never tasted this good.
Welcome back. You're still watching News Tonight. Elizabeth Nakakuni on sign language. I am Rhoda Ngonzi. Now, the local residents of Rugaga sub-county in Isinjiro district have been left with little to eat following a hailstorm that destroyed their banana plantations in the wee hours of Monday morning. The disaster comes at a time when the locals are recovering from famine and drought that hit them 2 years ago. Let's take a look.
This is what has been left for locals of Luganga sub-county in Isingiro district following the hailstone that hit them on Monday morning.
Enkuba netandika okutonya. Netuwulira ngeze n'embuyaga y'amaanyi. Netugamba bannange kino kiki. Nina ensuku bbiti. Obukadde n'obukadde bo buyise. Kati ngenda kuddayo ddi okutuuka wano.
Acres of banana plantations have been destroyed, leaving locals with nothing to eat, as well as almost no shelter, since homes were also blown away by winds, leaving many homeless.
People had applied for loans so that they can at least put in their banana plantation for more yield, and all that has failed totally, as you see around.
Bananas are the only crop that these locals depend on for both income and food. Majority of these affected people had loans and now fear banks will come for them since their income generating ventures have all been destroyed.
Tulina zironi nina bana bali ku campus badde sinasasula kumalayo loni sinazimalayo zenalya ezokusasulira abaana jukira ne mu covid byonna badde nsasula miliyoni buli mwezi.
It is now too sad to see that even the money they have used, the plantations that have started becoming good, they are destroyed. So we don't know whether these people will be able to pay even bank loans.
Locals here are now calling for government intervention.
So we ask our financial institutions to also waive, or else they give these people another period of time, so that when they recover, they will pay their own. But if they task them to pay now, they will imprison all of them because they cannot get the funds.
This disaster came at a time when the locals are recovering from the famine and drought that hit them 2 years ago.
Government yambe tukukawunga
akuba embeera si nnungi twabadde balimi nga tulina emmere yaffe nga tetusaba buyambi naye kati kino ekituguddeko batuyambe.
Now, Police Criminal Investigations Department has confirmed that investigations into alleged utterance and duplication of academic documents by a section of politicians has commenced. However, National Examinations Board, UNEB, distances itself from such acts and calls for penalization of the culprits.
During the NRM internal party organizations last year, the Party Electoral Commission boss, Dr. Tango Doi, maintained that false or fake academic qualifications will have no room in the party process.
I want to call upon Central and Kampala tomorrow not to bring NASA Road documents here, because NASA Road documents will cause us problems with people. If you know you don't qualify, come and we tell you the position where qualifications are not wanted.
Months later, allegations and court petitions over false academic documents by politicians have taken center stage.
I want to confirm that the Directorate of Criminal Investigations is indeed investigating a multiple of allegations of forged academic papers by a cross-section of politicians.
The blame is largely pushed to the National Council for Higher Education and the National Examinations Board, UNEB.
Some of the reported cases brought by the complainants surely shows the issue of quality. Our emphasis is only on forgery and uttering false documents.
First and foremost, the law does not compel them to verify their papers with your name. According to the law, they are supposed to avail the original certificates with the Electoral Commission. However, for avoidance of doubt, we always advise them to come and verify. There is one political party which insists on its flag bearers that they must verify with your name, their papers. So as UNEB, we cannot compel political aspirants to come and verify. However, when they do verify, we do provide the information and we always give them special treatment.
Others, however, fall to the judicial system.
Because once the court says it's not our duty, we then left it up to the public. And we gave the public 2 days in our roadmap that, well, the public, these people are vying for these positions. Please, could you come and check their papers? Some came, some did not come. I remember some came from the north, others came from West Nile, and we did our best where they came. But if you don't come, we have nothing to do. We cannot be a court within our court.
So once a petition is heard, the court makes its pronouncement and finds that indeed the documents relied on were forged. That means a case can translate from this side, which is civil, into a criminal side, whereby the police can pick it up and do more investigations on the forgery, which can lead to prosecution where possible.
Although the judiciary is not yet certain about the sum up of the elections petition, Kampala Metropolitan is believed to have attracted over 10 election petitions.
We are continuing to receive the numbers of the petitions which were filed, but in respect of the area of Kampala, we have 11 petitions.
Mr. Karemani reveals that this time round there will be an allocation alteration for judges and magistrates.
The allocations will be carried out, and this will be, it will also depend on the number of the petitions in an area, whereby the number of judges to be sent there will depend on the numbers that are there. But one of the things we try to observe, and we have always observed, is that the judges are taken across, and we don't encourage a judge to do petitions from where he works.
Our efforts for clarification from the Electoral Commission hit a dead end as they referred us to the National Council for Higher Education, a body charged with certification of academic qualifications whose officials were also unreachable by close of business. Robert Onyango, UBC News, Kampala.
And the Forum for Democratic Change, FDC, has called on government to reconsider lockdown that was imposed on some businesses. The party Deputy Secretary General Harold Keja says the increased level of insecurity in the country results from unemployed youth who lost their jobs when the country was affected by COVID-19 pandemic. This was at the party headquarters in Najanankumbi. Let's take a look.
At their daily Monday media briefing, the FDC attributed the increased criminality in the country to unemployed youth that have lost jobs when the country first had its lockdown.
We locked down this country, and there are some people that we locked down. Up to date, government has never thought about them. The young men who are like bouncers, who work in bars, those guys are home. They have a lot of energy, they have nothing to do. Those who try to be creative run to betting houses as a source of employment. And when they go there, they lose their bet and they have nothing to eat.
The FDC Deputy Secretary General, Harold Keja, says government should reconsider the imposed lockdown on some business sectors to enable them get back to work.
You look at young men, when they look at a huge vehicle, they see that person as an enemy. When they see somebody with money, they see them as their enemy. Because they have nothing. Everybody in this country must think about the youth who are unemployed.
In other news, the FDC party has joined the East African community to pay tribute to the fallen head of state of Tanzania, John Pombe Magufuli, referring to him as a yardstick in leadership.
As a patriot who loved his country, a leader who led for a short period, but very impactful.
They have tasked other leaders at all levels to pick a reef from the late Magufuli in order to foster democracy in their respective offices. Lydia Chomkama, UBC News.
Now, the justice advocates and law enforcers have been asked to consider timely trials for refugees for them to enjoy their freedom in the host community. Principal Judge Flavian Zeja says there is still need for all judges and prosecutors to be sensitized on handling refugee policies in the country.
An estimated 90,000 refugees in Uganda reside in Kampala registered as urban refugees. To qualify as an urban refugee, one must demonstrate security threats to life in settlements, medical reasons, and demonstration of self-reliance is required. According to KCCA, for every one registered urban refugee, there are 5 others residing in the city, of which many are not self-reliant and unable to meet the cost of urban living. The situation is exacerbated by the outbreak of COVID-19. Yet these refugees are not selecting the option of being relocated to the settlements, where they could easily access relief aid, awareness, and justice, among others.
The work they used to do was mainly hawking merchandise, and because of their lack of knowledge of the procedures, they found themselves on the wrong side of the law, and Kampala law enforcement agencies had to come in.
Valentine Namakula, the Executive Director, Center for Justice Studies and Innovation, says, due to the refugees' ignorance of what the policy requires them to do, law enforcers have taken advantage of this.
Of course, the law says ignorance is no defense, but most of the time it's also helpful, particularly for those vulnerable groups, to ensure that they understand where not to trade and what not to trade in, and if they go to the wrong side of the law, what procedures and mechanisms and what remedies are available to them. Being the rationale, the intention of the laws, that takes time for people to understand. It also is imperative that we go through the procedures, we take them through the procedures. When, for example, are you going to access police services? What is the expectation at police? How?
However, Principal Judge Flavian Zeija challenges refugees to cooperate with law enforcers and justice providers as they seek for justice.
So they need friendly procedures. We also need financial support, for example, to get some of those interpreters to be able to give them justice. Timely delivery of justice. We've had a series of sessions in the refugee camps, and you find, because you have delayed with the case, some of the refugees have gone back home.
The principal judge pledged to advocate for sensitization of judges and prosecutors on what the refugee policy requires them to do, and also focus on fighting gender-based violence among them.
We should make access to justice for them easy, because if you establish court outside the refugee camp, then it means you are increasing costs of transportation. And for example, you think that a refugee deserves bail, then you don't have to ask that refugee to provide you with a national ID, because the national ID is given to national.
All payments for National Drug Authority services are made through designated bank accounts. National Drug Authority. Safe drugs, save lives.
Yes! Enjoy great value from Airtel with the all-new My Pakalast combo offers. We have customized especially for you the best deals on minutes, data, and SMS with our 3-in-1 My Pakalast combo to give you the best value as you stay in touch with friends and family. To activate My Pakalast voice combo, dial *100 *2 *1 hash to get started.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
Today tastes like a new tradition, like an old favorite. Tastes like all hands on deck and all eyes on the prize. Today tastes like a piece of the action, and it never tasted this good.
That's their way of stopping HIV. What about you?
Water and environment means different things to different people. Did you know that water is the foundation of life, societies, and economies? Did you know that the environment plays an important role in healthy living and existence of the earth? What does water and environment mean to you? Be part of the Uganda Water and Environment Week 2021, themed Water and Environment Security for Social, Economic Transformation of Uganda. The Uganda Water and Environment Week, starting 21st to 26th March 2021. The guest of honor will be the Right Honorable Prime Minister of the Republic of Uganda, Dr. Ruhakana Rugunda. Join us as we discuss the importance of optimal utilization and management of water and environment resources for sustainable socio-economic transformation for all.
And on business news, government has finalized plans to carry out airborne geophysical survey for Karamoja region to ascertain the mineral potential in the area. The aerial survey is to be carried out by Excalibur, a Spanish company in partnership with the Uganda government under the Directorate of Geological Survey and Mines in the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development.
Despite delays due to insecurity, government has intensified the airborne surveys in Karamoja to ascertain mineral availability in the region. This was revealed by State Minister for Energy and Mineral Development, Saro Pendi, at the launch of the sensitization program in Moroto.
It has taken us a while to undertake this, partially because of previously 2006, 2008, the security concerns. We were able to undertake this geophysical survey in the rest of the country, and only Karamoja was left.
Uganda first carried out area surveys in 1960 to ascertain and map all the minerals in Uganda, but Karamoja has never benefited despite the high mineral potential in the area.
There was one time when the plane flew around the whole country, and we covered 80% of the country, but Karamoja was not flown at that time because of the security reason in this region by then. But now the situations are normalized, and we are ready to fly Karamoja and determine the mineral potential of the region. Of course, Karamoja, we know it has a lot of minerals, both what we call metallic minerals and industrial minerals.
In 2020, the Uganda government alongside the Spanish government secured funding to undertake airborne geophysical and geological mapping of Karamoja. It will now be executed by a firm called Excalibur, whose manager Vito Gonzalez explains details.
For the gravity survey, we are going to use another aircraft, a bigger one, because the gravity equipment is bigger, which is the PAC 750, which is an Australian aircraft, which we have been using for a long time, and we place the equipment inside and get the gravity data of the region, of the territory.
The project will be carried out for 18 months, and 2 aircrafts with a specialized equipment for data acquisition for the airborne survey will be used. If realized, mineral exploitation in the area will increase local and foreign investment that will benefit locals. The airborne survey will cover all districts of Karamoja and parts of the northern region of Lamu and Kitgum districts.
And Umeme, together with Uganda Police Force, have sent a stern warning to thieves of electricity and vandals across the country that their days are numbered. This was during the relaunch of the Komboa operation in Mutundwe, Kampala suburb. The operation seeks to redeem the electricity network from illegal users and operators.
Over the years, Umeme, a utility company, has incurred losses of billions of shillings annually due to illegal electricity connections and vandalism. It is estimated that Umeme loses over 100 billion shillings every year. The crime not only causes revenue loss but also affects the quality of power to the legitimate customers.
We will be in all corners of Kampala to start with, to ensure that we remove those illegal connections, and also there is an element of prosecution if we find you that you connected to the network illegally. So we want you to adhere. Please use the structures that we have put in place to ensure that you make good what may have gone wrong.
We call upon the members of the public to support us in this drive. If you see something, say something.
In many cases, the power thieves have lost their lives in the process, in addition to putting other innocent people in harm's way.
The example of Masaka is only one. Even Kapchorwa, where I come from, they bar at night. This one I communicated vividly because CP. People, if somebody has been executed and it was illegal connection, because of fear of being prosecuted, people bar at night, and you just hear that they bar at Chalangat yesterday. So it is a shame, 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 shame.
Vandalism and power theft are a national problem which amount to an economic crime, and it is for this reason that the police force has deployed hundreds of its officers to help in conducting the operation in Kampala city and its suburbs.
Uganda Police Force has dedicated a desk in the CID department called economic crime. Economic crime, they are going to be basically looking at the illegal connection and vandalism of Umeme lines.
However, the officers in uniform are cautioned against the use of unnecessary force when dealing with the suspects.
We have one word for us in police: plan. The word P stands for proportionality. If you are conducting arrest, the force offered to you and the resistance, the difference between force and resistance. How much resistance is the person being arrested, the suspect offering to you, before you even issue what? React.
Due to the rampant cases, the judiciary recently created a dedicated court for the utilities sector to expeditiously prosecute power thieves and vandalism offenders. Dennis Igoa for UBC News.
It's no secret that ICT makes learning easy.
The strides made in our field could not be possible without it.
And now we can watch our favorite shows.
My radio is my best friend.
UCC provides an enabling regulatory environment and policy guidance for healthy competition. We also facilitate ease of doing business in the communications sector through licensing, standardization, spectrum management, tariff regulation, rural communication development, and consumer empowerment. An informed consumer is an empowered consumer. UCC supports local content and innovations. Driving the development of a robust communication sector in Uganda is Uganda Communications Commission.
And on the world of sports, National Council of Sports has continued its inspection of the 51 national sports federations under its jurisdiction. The exercise, that is in line with the council's duties, aims at underlining key areas of focus for sports development in the country.
During their latest inspection tour of National Sports Federations, officials from National Council of Sports have made a stop at Uganda Cycling Association head offices along Salama Road. Such an inspection is orchestrated legally under the National Council of Sports statutory instrument, number 38 of 2014.
We are conducting a monitoring and evaluation exercise for all national sports federations or associations This is meant to appraise ourselves. Ourselves is both National Council of Sports and the federations and associations, for us to appreciate what's going on in their respective places of operation, but also to understand the challenges and where we can come in to help, such that when we are making decisions together, we have them made an informed point of view.
Uganda Cycling Association patron Jasper Aligawesa, who prior has been National Council of Sports Secretary General, appreciates this latest intervention.
I'm extremely happy, and this is what we have been advocating when I was General Secretary. We wanted the associations to have offices, to be affiliated, to have clubs or membership, and this is what National Council has done.
On his part, Uganda Cycling Association President Samuel Mahaba Muwonge calls upon National Council of Sports to target financial empowerment of federations.
Ebisinga tulina nekye tutalina ze ssente kubanga emizannyo tegijja kubeera nga musasula z'ofiisi mugula amagaali mutegaki kyo kati bwe bajja ku gurawundi eno balabira ddala ebizibu bye tulina kikyensaba nti baleme kukoma bukomi wano batufunire ebyetaagisa.
Upon completion of the inspection tour, a report to inform key government decision on support towards sport will be provided. John Barnes, Sentamo, reporting.
And the pathway for Uganda Netball Federation elections has been updated to the public by the returning officer Annette Nakamia. Nakamia confirms July the 5th as election date to replace Susan Anek as president of the federation, which has set sights on better representation at upcoming global engagements.
They have anyone who is willing to stand, or the people that they will be sending in as delegates. But what they need to know is that the offices are going to be at the offices of the Electoral Commission for the Uganda Netball Federation are going to be situated here at the Uganda Olympic Committee for the period of starting on the 25th of this month throughout June the 5th. The offices will be here. We shall be making periodical communications through press, through the media, and in writing to the clubs. What they need to know is that as the returning officer who was appointed by the General Assembly, I've put up a committee of 2 other people who will be helping me to run these elections. And my basis of electing these people, nominating these people, was that they are impartial. So they don't have any side in this election. So what we shall be doing is, me and those 2 other people will make sure that we conduct this election in a very free and fair manner.
Well, and that does it for news tonight. Thank you for sticking with us. Elizabeth Nakakoni on sign language. I am Rod Ngonzi. We do leave you with the weather update.
Brought to you by
At Umeme, your safety is our top priority. Report illegal practices to Umeme when you detect them. Download the Umeme app for other services. Stay alert, stay safe, save lives. Umeme, powering Uganda.
You're welcome. Here is the latest in weather from the Weather Center with Semper Alex Kim. We have had rainfall across most parts of the country, apart from the northeastern as well as the northwestern that had sunny intervals most of the day. By 9 a.m. this morning, various parts of the country reported some rainfall, like Masindi reported 29.5 millimeters, while Namlonge 26.5 and Tororo reported 24.2 millimeters. Now, this kind of weather is mainly attributed to the alignment of the rain belt across our region, and this is enhanced by the local effects of the lakes we have, as well as the mountains. In the morning, we do expect to have sunny intervals across most parts of the country, apart from areas along the Lake Victoria Basin, where we do expect some thundering rainfall. But into the afternoon, we do expect a pickup of thundering showers that will be across the western sector of the country. But for the eastern, we do expect some light isolated rainfall. And because of this, we do expect temperatures to rise to 31 degrees centigrade. That will be across Moroto, 27 in Kampala, and in Kabale Highlands, we are forecasting at 21 degrees centigrade. We have been having thundering rainfall and storms across the country, and we do expect this to continue. But here are some of the safety tips that may come in handy.
Okumanya omubiri gwo, endya ennungi, ebyobulamu byonna, n'embeera ennungi. Tuula ntende ku program obulamu bwo.
Abaganda balina enjogera ebawoomera ennyo eyakazibwako okutemya n'okuzibula. Kye baba bategeeza mu kyo y'embeera ey'okuba nti ekintu kikoleddwa mu bwangu oba ekintu nga bakikoze mu supiidi eyayiriiri. Naye Abaganda bagezi okugeraageranya obwangu obukolebwa mu kintu ku kutemya kw'eriiso. Kubanga ekituufu kiri nti bannassaayansi batugamba nti okutemya kw'eriiso kukozesa ebinywa ebidduka ku supiidi yayiri. Actually bagamba nti mu mubiri gw'omuntu ebinywa eby'eriiso tewaliiwo bibisinga bwangu, ensonga lwaki biba bitemya bikikola mu supiidi yayiri. Naye nga ebyokutemya bitadde ku mabbali, bannassaayansi era be bamu batugamba nti eriiso litemya emirundi egisoba mu bukadde obuna omwaka mulamba. Kiba kitegeeza nti ebyekyewuunyo bingi nnyo ku liiso tetuyinza kubimalamu. Naye nakano kampa bagambe, obadde okimanyi nti eriiso lirina ebitundu ebyenjawulo ebikola mu lyo ebisoba mu bukadde obubweru. Era abamanyi ebintu bagamba nti eriiso lyerimu lisobola okwawula langi ezisoba mu bukadde 10 ez'enjawulo. Nabwe kityo nno kiba kitegeeza nti eriiso kintu kikulu nnyo gye tuli. Leero mu puroguramu obulamu bwo tugenda kutunuulira ku ndwadde ekwata eriiso emanyiddwa nga glaucoma. Era nga eddimu lino sigenda kulikola bwomu, nina abakugu mu nsonga zino ez'amaaso. Nina abagenyi babiri, nina Dr. Simon, nina ne Dr. Baker. Ngenda kubasaba mubuuze ku balabe baffe abalungi. Ndowooza kantandikire Dr. Simon.
Bannange neeyazizza nnyo era omutesitesi wa program Mwami Francis abatulaba mwenna balamusizza era nga bw'ayogedde amannya bampita Simon Arunga era nga ndi musawo mukugu w'amaaso nga ne bwe twogera kaakati nzaakulembera abasawo ab'amaaso mu Uganda kyewandiise President of the Ophthalmology Society of Uganda ng'emirimu gyange ngikolera mu kibuga ky'Embalala nkola n'Embalala University of Science and Technology era n'eddwaliro lye bayita Dr. Arunga's Eye Hospital. Nga tetunnatandika nga bwe nfunye guno omukisa njagala kutumirako abantu bange mwenna ab'Embalala era n'omukyala wange omwagala ennyo Dr. Viola Arunga n'abaana bange Jeremiah ne Simeon. Balamusizza era neyanzizza okubeera wano.
Weewaawo naffe tuli basanyufu mu bufu bwe bumu okuba nti okkiriza n'otufiisi zaakadde nojja tubeeko oboolyawo ebyenjawulo bye tugatta ku ggwanga. Abantu b'Embalala bagamba ki? Omanyi budde okujja mu Mbalala eyo?
Mbalala nnungi nnyo era tuli basanyufu kubanga kati naffe tuli kibuga ng'e Kampala ne size ne weyandibadde tenkana ne Kampala
naye nga
kati naffe
muli basanyufu
Mbalala City.
Mbalala City. Weewaawo bubufu bwe bumumpozi ne Dr. Bekanozi era nabibuuza ku balabe baffe abalungi.
Tuyanziza kuteesesa programu eno. Amannya nze Abubakar Kalinaki ndi musawo omukugu w'amaaso nze ne president wange wa kibiina ekitugatta mu Uganda. Balamusizza nnyo abalabe baffe. Emirimu egyange ngikolera ku University Makerere ndi support staff mu department y'amaaso naye awo n'ekyo nkolera ku ddwaliro eyitibwa Diopter Eye Care Center ddwaliro ly'amaaso mu Kampala wano. Kankwesa omukisa guno kubuuza ku bantu baffe ab'emagigi mu Kiso naye saabo bokka ne mukyala wange Masitula Naloga n'abaana bange Sulaiman, Mariam, Aisha, Zainab ne Muhammad. Tuyanziza nnyo omukisa guno gw'okutuyita twogereko eri abantu baffe ku bintu bya nsonga z'amaaso.
Ku nsonga z'amaaso weewaawo ndowooza haki ekyaliyemu.
Sofa.
Omanyi nansonyiwa atera oluusi okusaagamu Dr. Beko ono ntera okugera olugero wano nti ensinkano tebera ya lumu oluusi enkejje amazzi galeka mu nnyanja ate negasisinkana mu luwombo. Dr. Beko ono twalabaganako mu bbanguliro ly'abasawo erya medical school e Makerere so tumanyiganye kyova olaba tekinzibuwalira kuba naye lwali. Ndi musanyufu nti mukkiriza ne mujja ne mukya tubeeko oboolyawo bye tuyiga ku maaso. Omanyi ensonga z'amaaso nkulu. Nze ennaku ezo ndowooza Sande ewedde naliko mu kyaki zino ezaffe za bulijjo ne bayita omukyalo omwawe obujulizi naye ebiseera ebisinga abantu bababeera bawa obujulizi banguwa nnyo okwogera ku bugagga ssente emmotoka naye nga leero bwe mbadde nsomako ndabye nti n'okuba obubi n'eriiso nga lisobola okukola kuba n'eriiso bye likola nti obubuka obujulizi buba bukumala okulaga nti Katonda gy'ali kubanga eriiso kyekintu omuntu oba oli awo kyaba talowoozezaako naye nga kya mugaso nnyo nti singa omala eddakiika eziwera nga ozibiriza toyinza nakutambula kutuuka mu kkubo. So abakulu bano bakugu mu maaso bwe tuba tusoma obusawo tulondako ebyenjawulo bye tukuguka nga bw'onaawulira nti ono musawo w'abaana ono musawo w'abakyala kati omulabi waffe njagala leero otegeere nti bano ate bakugu mu nsonga z'amaaso. Awo nvuddewo Dr. Simon ndowooza ntandikirewo tusigire omulabi waffe ekifaananyi bwe twogera ku bulwadde bwa glaucoma oba glukoma omulabi waffe ategeere ki?
Nanzizza nnyo mu testes naye nga tetunnagenda ku obulwadde obwo waliwo kyembadde njagala okutangaaza byobadde oyogera era ne nyongeze n'okunyweza
okukkatiriza
kati omanyi bwe tuba tusoma mu busawo tukimanyi nti omuntu abeera ne sensi 5 waliwo ey'okulaba ey'okwogera ey'okuwunyiriza bye bayita smell eya feeling naye ezo zonna ekitongole ky'ensi yonna kye bayita WHO omwaka oguwedde kyafulumya alipoota egamba nti mu bitundu ebyo 5 byonna okulaba y'essensi ekyasinze ennyo omugaso kubanga ensi yaffe nga obuwangwa bwaffe nga bwe twatondebwa ebintu bingi nnyo bizimbiddwa kulaba okutambula kubeera kukulaba okusoma kubeera kukulaba okukola bw'oba tolaba bulungi tosobola kusoma tosobola kutambula so olaba kintu kikulu nnyo sense y'okulaba
mu Luganda tulina n'olugero olugamba nti okutambula kulaba
n'olwekyo kituleeta ku mulamwa ogw'olwaleero bwe bayita mujja kunsonyiwamu bannange Oluganda ndwogera mpola
tubabudindo newunyisiza omanyi nabadde ntidde kampuli ekimuli nabadde ntidde bwe nalabye erinnya ne waliwo watumiridde abantu baffe b'embalala ne ndowooza nti oba oliawo Oluganda lugenda kubeera matankane naye ndi musanyufu nti ate mwana wattu olukuba budinda naffe eno Buganda oba oliawo tujja kukuwaayo omuntu
batumidde olowooza okutapatutte
kakati obulwadde buno obuba gulukoma mu luzungu bakiyita gulukoma ba mu science naye mu lulimi lwaffe olw'Uganda tusobola okukiyita pulesa y'eriiso nga bw'olaba omusaayi oba omubiri obulwadde bwa pulesa ndowooza abantu bangi babumanyi kubanga abantu bangi babulwala pulesa y'omubiri n'osanga nti pulesa y'omubiri erinnye okusukka weyina okubeera kusinziira ku myaka gy'omuntu gy'aba ayina oba obuwangwa bwe oba musajja oba mukyala n'olwekyo n'eriiso nalyo lirina pulesa yaalyo pulesa eyo bw'erinnya n'egenda waggulu n'esukka weyina okusukka etandika okukosa ebitundu bingi mu liiso era ekitundu ekisinze okukosebwa bakiyita mu lusayansi bayinza okiyita optic nerve naye optic nerve mu lulimi olumpi ke kaguwa akayunga eriiso n'obwongo kubanga ebifaananyi bwe biyingira mu liiso eriiso libikwata ne libisindika mu bwongo obwongo bulyoke buvuunule bukugambe nti kati olaba egiraasi olaba ekitaala
ekitegeeza actually olina ekintu kyoyogedde ekiyinza okusizza nti eriiso lino likwatagana n'obwongo kyova olaba nti ndowooza oluusi ne bw'oba ozibiridde osobola okukuba ebifaananyi kubanga olina oluguwa luli eri lwoyogeddeko lw'optic nerve luva ku liiso ate ne lugenda muki so n'obwongo nabwo bulina ebifaananyi engeri gye bubyozaamu oba nga images ozifuna eri
so ojjukira nga nga tukyali mu myaka egyo egyedda wajjanga nga ku bugenyi newajja omusajja wa kamera n'akuba ebifaananyi n'ayogamba kati mbitutte mu studio kubyoza kubyozaamu so ogwo omuguwa gwe mugaso gutwala ebifaananyi mu bwongo okubyozaamu n'olwekyo bw'obeera n'obulwadde buno obwa gulukoma ogwo gw'omuguwa ogwonooneka
mpozi abamu akagambo omuguwa bayinza okabuzaabuza abantu ekigambo nerves abantu bakiyita busimu naye simu obusimu bwaffe tukwata wabula mu lulimi olwangu ziringa waya z'amasanyalaze tugamba eriiso likuba ekifaananyi obubaka ne bugenda ku bwongo kati nerve eyo gya optic nerve oba obusimu bwe butwala message ku bwongo nolira okuolaba kati omuntu wabujja amanyi obusimu kasita oyogera ku busimu amanya nti nerves zoba oyogeddeko
akinsanyusizza Dr. Abeka ageze n'ayogera Dr. Simon ageze n'ayogera ku basajja bali abajjanga ne kamera ne batukuba ebifaananyi ebifaananyi ebyo mbijjukira twapozinganga ne mukuŋŋaana tugeze oba mu maaso g'ennyumba awo mu kifugi kakati bwe mwakuŋŋaananga buli muntu ne bagamba akole sayini oba n'okola engeri y'obukolomooni kakati n'akuba ate bwe baakubanga baalinanga obukodyo alina engeri gye yakkangamu obulusi n'afukamira sekamu katono sembera mweno kati abantu abo tebakyalabika ennaku zino tekinologi akyuzi naye kyembadde njagala okunyumirwa bwe bunkenke bwe mwabanga nabo ng'agenze n'amala ewiiki okubakomezaawo ki ebifaananyi bino byakoze eki byakubye kyabanga kinyuma naye nga tetunagenda ndowooza ku kiddako ndowooza katusooke tuwummulemu oba oli awo bwe tukomawo tugende maaso n'okutegeera endwadde eno eya glaucoma tovaawo.
Akulemesa kumalawo kikyo y'ensonga lwaki MTN ekuwa data banda ataggwako. Tekako data wa MTN Freedom Bundle ng'okozesa My MTN app olunyirwa eddembe okozesa data mu bujjuvu.
MTN.
Today tastes like a new tradition, like an old favorite. Tastes like all hands on deck and all eyes on the prize. Today tastes like a piece of the action. And it never tasted this good.
Kulikayo nnyo mukuwummulamu bulijjo ntera okubagamba nti okuwummula tekubeera nga kukutuuka tukyalina ebigambo bingi ntoko ebiva mu bakulu bano abakungu b'amaaso. Dr. Abubeka twogedde ku ndwadde ya glaucoma. Dr. Simon yaginnyonnyodde. Siigira omulabi waffe ekifaananyi etukosezza etya okutwaliza awamu kubanga omuntu ayinza obutamanya bunene bwa bulwadde buno ngeri gye bukoze eki gye bukosezza mu bantu.
Neyanze ekibuuzo ekyo omulamu ogwo omuntu wabanga bwogedde ku kirwadde kyonna ebbanga lyamalanga takiwalangako tamanya buzito bwakyo n'abantu bakoseddwa benkanawa. So okusiiga ekifaananyi ky'abantu bameka abakoseddwa obulamu buno obwa glaucoma kiyinza otuzuukusa ne tumanya nti kirwadde kikosezza abantu bangi era obulamu bwabwe tebusigadde kyekimu. So tutandike nnyo ku level y'ensi yonna nti ensi erimu abantu bangi n'ensi ez'enjawulo. Mu nsi yonna glaucoma akosezza oba avuddeko okuziba kw'amaaso abantu obukadde 76 mu nsi yonna.
Lindako ne tubala nti abantu 10,000 mutwalo ne tubala nti kakadde kakati ate ne tutandika okubala kakadde kamu ne tubala nti obukadde 76 abalina endwadde eno eya glaucoma.
Si kuba na ndwadde kyokka wabula ne baziba amaaso.
Baziba n'amaaso.
Kitegeeza abalina endwadde bangi
abatamanyi.
Kakati badde neyo y'amaanyi nnyo era atulaba yenna tetwagala obeere mu bantu abo abayinza okweyongera tukola projections nti myaka egijja mu maaso bwe tuba tetulina kyetukozeewo ku kirwadde kino ennamba eyo egenda yeyongera bweyongezi. Kakati mu Africa wano obukadde 12 ekirwadde ekyo kibazibye amaaso obwekutte era Uganda mwegitwalidde naye nga bano bemanyikiddwa bokka abatamanyikiddwa bangi.
Kuba kakati bino byombuulira ombuulira bamanyikiddwa kiba kitegeeza nti waliwo n'omuwendo gw'abantu betutamanyi ogweyongera ku bano nti bayinza n'okuba basoba mu bukadde 12.
Sebuwe kiri kubanga n'abajanja b'amaaso mu ggwanga oba mu Africa batono nnyo. Kitegeeza omukisa gw'omuntu okufuna omusawo amugamba nti olina glaucoma sinti bwe mwagulina kitegeeza bangi nnyo bali eyo tetumanyi namba yaabwe so ate mu Uganda wano akadde kamu n'ekitundu ku bubiri bateebereza okuba nga balina ekintu ekya glaucoma nga kyabakosa amaaso n'okulaba kwabwe so abatulaba mwenna badeni eyo y'amaanyi nnyo omuntu amala okuziba amaaso nga omusawo kamulange bwagambye nti obulamu butambulira kulaba omuntu oyo ava mu community ava mu bantu n'abeera eyo nga nti ogenda wamuzibe nti ngenda wamuzibe abamu nina mutabanyi wange twayitako mu tawuni tulaba omusajja nga amaaso galabika bulungi era omuntu ayinza okubuuza nti galaba naye nga tegalaba omwana n'abuuza nti daddi omusajja atambuza kaggo naye nga amaaso ndaba malungi nemugamba nti ekirwadde kya pressure y'amaaso kyekyamutta amaaso so abantu abava mu community olwokuba nti tebasobola kukola mirimu tebasobola okulaba bali mu byalo bali mu mayumba so ensonga nkulu nnyo okumanya nti badeni y'amaanyi
ate ekintiisiza Dr. sorry nga tonabakogera Dr. Simon ekintiisiza kya kino kyoyogedde nti abasawo abakugunga mmwe mu nsonga zinizo ez'amaaso batono nti bantu batono nnyo abafuna omukisa okubeera ne ku statistic eno okuba nti abuuliddwa nti kati gwe olina puleesa y'amaaso kubanga bangi tebafuna na mukisa oba oli awo okugenda mu ddwaliro tubabale so omuwendo guno oguba nti gukira nti gusingako ekyo nno kintiziza obadde olina kyoyongerako
mpoza okwongerako webale nnyo kugwa Bubeka nti ku lw'ensonga eyo nti obulwadde buno bungi nnyo mu nsi yonna ekitongole ky'ensi yonna kye bayita WHO kyateekawo wiiki namba wiiki namba eyo etandika mu wiiki ey'okubiri buli gwakusatu ogw'omwaka nga wiiki eyo ejjukira ekirwadde kino ekya glaucoma ekya puleesa y'amaaso n'obuzibu bwekikosezza abantu bonna n'olwekyo mu nsi yonna wiiki eno kubanga ennaku z'omwezi 8 kutuuka 15 mu nsi yonna tujja kuba tujjukira ekirwadde kino ekya puleesa y'eriiso n'okugezaako okutegeeza abantu obuzibu bwekireese
era awo nyininyini Dr. Simon twogera kuno ne kuli ne tunyonnyola emiwendo ne tutya nnyo n'ekirwadde kino naye nkiwa omulabi waffe bw'aba ng'alaba amaaso banaatera okugalinnyira mu kkubo ng'alinze kumanya bubonero ki obulwadde buno obwa puleesa y'amaaso bwe bulina oba oli awo adduka jje gye muli awo wenyininyini woba otandikira
neyanziza nnyo ekibuuzo ekyo omanyi nange nga bwe nasalawo okutendekebwa ne nfuuka omukugu w'amaaso ekintu ekyansinga okunneewuunyisa ennyo kyali kirwadde kino ekya puleesa y'eriiso simanyi kirwadde kino kyatondebwa butonde ki kubanga engeri gye tumanya endwadde omusawo Francis endwadde ziyina okuleetera omuntu kuwulira embeera gy'alimu
nti walisuubiddwa nti bwembeera nga nina kyendwadde oba tugeze nfunyikira vingi eryo nti evivi ligenda kunnuma
naye buno kino ekirwadde kya puleesa y'eriiso tekibeera na bubonero tekibeera na bubonero era bakikubya n'erinnya lye bayita nti silent thief of sight
tugende mpola omanyi ebiseera bisinga mbasaagala kuntwala speed buli wontwala speed ate ndeka omulabi waffe ate nga ebiseera bisinga oba oyogedde ku nsonga nga ki nga nkulu kakati njagala kuddamu byoyogedde ndaba oba sibikyusizza Dr. Simon agamba nti oyinza okuba n'ekirwadde kino ekya puleesa y'amaaso naye nga tulina kabonero kalaga n'akamu nti obulina kakati ate nnyo ekyo nno kyakweraliikiriza kyamaanyi olw'ensonga nti ffe twalisuubidde nti bwemba nina obulwadde nina okuba n'obubonero kakati kiba kitegeeza naye wennyini ali ku TV alaba osobola okuba nga olina ekirwadde kino naye nga tomanyi kuno okweraliikirira kw'amaanyi
era n'okwongera okwo njagala kunnyonnyola lwaki omuntu abeera nga talina bubonero kati olaba bwe twatondebwa n'amaaso abiri era omutonzi yakiteekawo dizayini eyo nti amaaso oluusi limu bwe liba nga likoseddwa eddala likole ki liriyambe yes
kakati sorry nsonyiwa okulya ekimu ebiseera bisinga nansonyiwa njagala nnyo nentambulira nga omulabi wange wajja wenzija ekigere oba wetukijja naye wakolaki wakijja kubanga wano wetumaze okukola statement eri yokuba nti obulwadde buno tebulina kabonero ate mbadde ntidde nenkiwa nti n'omulabi wange atidde naye ate bwokinyonyodde nti Katonda yatukola n'amaaso abiri erimu bwe liba ligenda lirwala eddaala likolaki kati oyinza okuba n'eriiso erimu nga ligenda lirwala ng'eddaala terinalwala naye nga linda eddamu likyakolaki ate nga naawe era bwogezaamu kubanga
Today tastes like a new tradition, like an old favorite. Tastes like all hands on deck and all eyes on the prize. Today tastes like a piece of the action. And it never tasted this good.
That's their way of stopping HIV. What about you?
wewa kulikayo mu kunywa olwendo lw'amazzi nkiwa naawe ali eyo badde olunywa newankubadde nga sikulabye ate nga twogera ku puroguramu yakulaba otugerete mukuumulamu abakulu bano boogedde ebintu bingi ebikanga ate nga gemazima ffe omulimu gwaffe kujja wano na kubuulira bituufu nga bwe biri oba bitiisa oba tebikolaki tebitiisa endwadde eno eyakulako muba eya puleesa y'amaaso batunyonyodde nti osobola okubeeraawo nga ogirina naye nga tolina kabonero ate wotandikira okulaba enzikiza oba wotandikira okuba n'obubonero ebeera ekuzuba oliawo nga n'okugijjanjaba kizibu. Dr. Abeka, Dr. Simon, omulabi waffe tusooke tumujjabulire mu biki ebyenjawulo oba oliawo ebyenkizo ebireetera omuntu omu okulwala endwadde eno omulala n'atagitwala kuba nkiwasi buli muntu nti oba oliawo agirwala naye walina okuba nga waliyo ndowooza mu lunabudu kye tuyita risk factors ndowooza kanemu kanabbiri mayi twazanyanga ntandikire sayidi eno kantandikire ne Dr. Abeka obwedda asise nnyo obwedda ontunulira kyamulinga essalaamu eri ensenke
si bwe kiri ensonga gye tuliko nsonga nkulu era nga wokyogedde nti omulimu gwaffe okusomesa abantu baffe omanyi okuziiza ekirwadde ekikulu nnyo okusinga okujjanjaba naddala ku kirwadde nga kino kitwogerako ekya glaucoma ekya puresha y'amaaso nti omulwadde wajja nga kimaze okutta eriiso si mulwadde eka yanakuwola n'omusawo agamba singa yajja wekyali twandibadde twantasiza ekirwadde kino okutalonda amaaso ga muntu so kyekiyongera emikisa gy'omuntu okufuna ekirwadde kya glaucoma nze naawe twandibadde tumanya risk factors oba ekiretera omuntu ebyenkizo
oli okufuna ono n'atafuna oba oli n'afuna
ekisooka nno omwana kyewuunyisa ekisooka kubanga oli mufirika
sooka olindeko
si kusosola mawanga kino ekirwadde munduza kyaffe wano mu Africa okusinga
kwegamba okuba omufirika kyekimu ku byenkizo ebirina okuba nti nsobola okulwala obulwadde buno kati olwongezaako okungerageranya n'abannaffe abazungu abachina abayindi nti nze olwokuba nti ndi mufirika oba munanga ndaba olwokuba nti muddugavu munnauganda nti awo omukisa weeguli nti ajja kufuna ekirwadde
omukisa weeguli kitegeeza nze naawe
tetweyibaala
kati abali mu nsi ziri ez'abazungu balina communities ez'enjawulo, balina abantu bava mu Africa, bava mu Latin America, bava mu Asia, naye bakola research bagenda okulaba nga ekirwadde kya pressure y'amaaso kisinga kukosa Abafirika. So kiraga nti si kusosola. Kati gwali wano mu Uganda ate kati kirwadde ngamba kirwadde kyaffe. Si kukyenyumirizaamu naye omukisa gw'amaanyi nnyo okufa nga tukifuna.
Ogamba ne bw'ogenda okukuba ekyeyo n'oba wano e Uganda n'ogenda mu nsi z'obweru naye kasita obeera omuddugavu.
Era n'omusawo agamba nti sebo tukwanyiriza naye olina omukisa gw'okufuna glaucoma naye tekiba kimu kyokka, ebintu bimanyi okwegatta nga biwerakokko. Kati kitwogedde ku kyokuba Omufirika kitegeeza muna Uganda muna Kenya omukisa gwe guli okufuna osofuna glaucoma. Ekyokubiri okubanga olinayo omuganda wo, olinayo taata wo, sengawo, omuntu wa famire yo eyazibako amaaso, tetumanyi glaucoma naye tugamba nti yazibako amaaso, kitegeeza nti ayinza okuba yaziba amaaso ga glaucoma. So olwera n'omuntu wo ng'ali mukyalo eyo nga yaziba amaaso teweeyibaala,
oyinza okuba nga yalina ndwadde eno yeemu ate kati awo mbadde njagalira okubuuza ekyo kyekimu n'okutegeeza nti obulwadde buno busobola okuba obwensikirano nti tusobola okubujja ku banyaffe bakitaffe oba bajjajjaffe ne butambulira mu famire. Bwe kiri era kitegeeza nti fuba nnyo okutegeera twali tufunyeyo omuntu waffe eyazibako amaaso. Ndi Mufirika tukimaze ekyo naye nina jjajja wange baga yazibako amaaso ne gazibira ddala. Omukisa kyongera kikufuula wankiza okufuna ekirwadde kya glaucoma ow'amaaso. Kitegeeza nti gw'okukebera amaaso n'okuscreeninga n'okwekebeza ku glaucoma ate gwe kikulu nnyo okusinga ku bana batalina muntu erazibyeko amaaso mu famire.
N'okwongerako ekyo bwe tuba tujjanjaba obulwadde buno era omuntu bw'ajja ne tumusanga ng'alina obulwadde buno ku bimu ebintu bye tukola tumutuma baganda be. Tumutuma baganda be, bw'aba omuntu mukulu tumutuma abaana be
nabo mubakebere kubanga bw'abanga abulina ayinza okubanga abulekedde jjajjaawe ekyannamukaaka ye nga yeefuddeko yekka. Nze no bw'oyogedde ku kya family history kyenzijjukidde bano baana bawala abanoonya abaami oba baana balenzi abanoonya abawala nti bw'ebeera ng'embeera eno etambulira mu famire lowooza tekyali badde kyamagezi oli okusooka okukebera famire eyo baziba amaaso
obufumbo bw'enza okugaana abantu bayinza okusigala nga bawulu naye abasinga bayinza okwegaana.
Tugende mu maaso n'ebirala ebiviirako embeera.
Omanyi ekirwadde kino abantu bonna tulina embeera y'okwegaana tugita ddinaayo. For example abalina siriimu ayinza okugamba kisoboka nze kuba na siriimu, kati buli omu asira nnyo okubeera ku sayidi etaliiko buzibu. Kati atulaba ayinza okwegamba nti kisoboka eno ndi Mufirika naye sisuubira nti tulina yalina glaucoma oba pressure y'amaaso. So naye bino ebintu bikulu. Ekyokulala omuntu akula mu myaka kyongera emikisa egy'okufuna glaucoma pressure y'amaaso. Emyaka 8 okudda waggulu gyeyongera okukula n'emikisa egy'okufuna glaucoma oba pressure y'amaaso gyeyongera. Kitegeeza nti risk factors zino tuzigattagatta ng'oyo Mufirika okaddiye ate olinayo pressure ate gwe olina kudduka misinde gyambiro okubanga weescreeninga. So kitegeeza nti omwana omuto emikisa mitono nnyo okusanga glaucoma mu myaka emito okujjako mu mbeera endala kati nga abaana bato bazaalibwa nga balina glaucoma, congenital glaucoma olinga kizibu yazaalibwa nakyo. Naye kyetwogerako kino ekisinza okuziba amaaso ky'abantu bakulu bakuze mu myaka. Omuntu abalengere okumpi tubayita myopic abali short sighted, omuntu nga okulabye wala yeetaaga galubindi abo nabo nno balina emikisa mingi nnyo okufuna glaucoma oba pressure y'amaaso.
Lindako tugende mpolampola kubanga njagala nnyo twogera ate ku bintu by'endaba. Ennaku zino baana bawala baana balenzi beekaliisa nnyo ne galubindi ziyinza okuba nga za masappe naye ate ziyinza n'okuba nga za ndwadde eri gyoyogeddeko ey'amayupi omuntu ng'akalubirirwa okulaba ebiri okumpi oba okulaba ebiri ewala. Kaakati kyogamba nti mwambala galubindi ng'ensonga yakubanga tulaba biri kumpi oba tulaba biri wala nga galubindi ze zikuyamba naawe olina omukisa okufuna endwadde neya pulesa y'amaaso kuba bintu bimwogera kati byendaba abakadde mbalaba n'abafirika abazibe mu famire bambala galubindi waliyo engeri endala Dr. Simon oba embeera endala empirako embeera eno
ebyo omusawo byayogeddeko bikulu nnyo byetuyita meja naye waliyo n'ebirala abantu ababeera n'endwadde endala tugambe omuntu alina obulwadde bwa sukaali sukaali yafuuka kibuli kaseera buli wamu mpulira boogera sukaali oba ne pressure y'omusaayi naye yinza okukuleetera emikisa egy'okufuna endwadde eneyagladde naye waliwo ekintu ekirala kyendaba nnyo abantu abakozesa eddagala ly'amaaso eddagala lino ekika kyenjogerako kika ekijjanjaba alaji ng'amaaso gakusiiwa n'ogenda ku dduuka mumpaeyo akagundi ako kati waliwo eddagala baliyita steroid mu science kati eddagala eryo lirina kye bayita side effect nga bwe wandimize akakerenda n'otandika okwepakula eba side effect so oyinza okuteekamu eddagala mu maaso n'ojjawo kuli okusiiwa naye kyotamanya nti eddagala eryo ate litandisa okuleetera pulesa okukola ki muliiso ekyo nno kyoyogedde ekikulu ndowooza kantu alina omukisa guno nange nkikkaatirizeemu nti tekyali badde kirungi ennaku zino pharmacies nyingi oba watundirwa eddagala wangi ate ebiseera ebisinga abantu olugenda bampeeyo ak'amaaso bakuwa oli awinza okwesala akakuwadde si mukugu w'amaaso nti kyali badde kyamagezi munanga ayeyandaba obanga buzibu bwe buli ku liiso omusawo w'amaaso yennyini yali kuwandiikidde ki eddagala kubanga yajja kumanya nti lino kino ekiko kikozesezza nnyo kiyinza okuviiramu pulesa oba kino kyetaaga oba tokola ki tokyetaaga so ebintu bya self medication siba mbyogerako wano bulijjo twegeziwaza nnyo tubeera eyo basanga bwe bava mu katale okukola kaleerwe oba bwe bava mu kazannyo kaludde okuzannya nkutumiddeko kiviiri wali omukwano gwange ayagala nnyo omuzannyo gw'eddenge abeera kawempaawo kiviiri naye eriso olukusiiwa bwoti gwe ngodduka ka drug shop ng'okola ki ng'ogula ak'okutonyeza kayinza okuviiramu obulabe
sinakindi si kugula kwokka omumadde ayinza okujja eri omusawo n'amwandikira akadagala n'agamba kati kiwedde sijja kudda si kirwadde kyokka ekimuleesera omusawo naye konna kaafuna ku liiso nga akuuma akantu kaako
aba yajja kumu nga wamuwa kakusiiwa akokutonyeza mu liiso kakati bwe liba limuluma bulumi ne bwaba aliwulira nga teriraba bulungi
kaliagamba kakola bulungi ng'agenda agulaga mpaka no tokyusamu so nga
waliyo abalala najja mu ddwaliro omusajja oba mukyala n'omuwa akadagala n'akakozesa ennaku nga bbiri n'awona naye n'akatereka omwana bw'alwala oba bbaawe nga eddagala nina nkyetwetaga genda wa musawo ajjayo kali ke yajje
sooka olindeko ate mbagadde nnyo olw'ensonga zemwogerako ziruleetinga nnyo ne community gye tubeera mu Kisenyi oba enaakulabye nga bw'okyogedde nti bwe kabanga omuzadde yakagula n'akatonyeza ku liiso kakati omwana bweri musiiwa ate kali agamba nti ate mugenda waliwo kano kwegamba embeera eyo oba kiki oba ekifirika n'engeri gyetukwata ate netukola ensobi nyingi abakulu bano bawulidde bulungi nkiwa oli eyo oyagala kumanya butya bwe tujjanjaba obulwadde buno naye ndowooza olw'obudde katusooke tuwummulemu katono ate bwe tukomawo awo nyininyini abakulu bano batunnyonnyole butya bwe tuyinza okujjanjaba endwadde eno namagezi ki gye batuwa endwadde eno ereme tukwata ndowooza tovaawo.
Teachers who care create a good learning environment.
Because a good school equals a better life.
Raising voices.
Today tastes like a new tradition, like an old favorite. Tastes like all hands on deck and all eyes on the prize. Today tastes like a piece of the action. And it never tasted this good.
Uganda, the land of sunshine. Breathtaking, stunning sights, incredibly extensive large greenery. Variety of wild animals and bird species. A wide range of luxury holiday facilities. Diverse, rich culture. The home of beautiful, welcoming, hospitable people. Uganda, the Pearl of Africa.
If you want to benefit from the cabbage, you can decide to go for the dry season planting or the wet season planting. Those are key things to look at. But the other bit is about the yield and the maturity period.
Agriculture has been for years forming the backbone of Uganda's economy, contributing approximately 37% of local growth, with 80% of the population practicing agriculture.
Green tea is different from black tea. Green tea does not go through the fermentation process of the factory, meaning that it has retained all the medicinal values in it.
This is a good leaf for plucking. When it is already marked, so like it has the marks. Yes. It is very easy for a farmer to just follow those markings and then drop it.
Join us every Wednesday as we showcase comprehended and well-researched episodes on agriculture, on the new innovations, planting, harvesting, modern technologies, and more you would like to know in the farming field.
The farmers, they no longer bring the more of comb honey.
So after extracting the honey from the frames, then they are removed and placed back in a chupa.
Farm Matters, a program where all your farming needs are addressed.
Solution to farmers for what they need. What farmers need is income in their pocket, isn't it? It's about money in the pocket.
This program has helped me to improve farming skills. Keep watching Farm Matters at UBC.
My name is Dr. Henry Dungu, a consultant in hematology and oncology. Health promotion and disease prevention programs focus on keeping people healthy. They aim to engage and empower individuals and communities to choose healthy behaviors and make changes that reduce the risk of developing chronic diseases and other illnesses. Join me on New Health Chat every Thursday at 9 p.m. on UBC TV, sponsored by National Medical Stores, who are mandated to procure, store and distribute essential medicines and medical supplies to all public health facilities in the country.
Winston Churchill named it the Pearl of Africa. Uganda is probably one of the most gifted countries in the world. The people, the food, the love, the climate, the culture, the scenery, and the peace and tranquility.
This week on UBC.
The investment decisions that we make, do we make them because everyone is in, or and then if you're choosing to invest, where, maybe if you're choosing to invest and you're borrowing, where should you borrow? We are saying businesses that have not been able to meet their obligations in the past are given the leeway not to pay interest and penalty. Now, if anyone, you entrepreneurs, if you're watching,
some argue that education is the heartbeat of Uganda's future. Others, well, that it is simply life, that education is the only way to ensure that tomorrow's generations are well nurtured. From school conditions across the country all the way to scholarships and more, Uganda's Ministry of Education.
Head home and nowhere else. Thank you so much for your services for NBS Live at 9. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us here. It is the late Nelson Mandela who argued that it's only through education that the child of a coal miner can become the managing director of the farm. If education goes wrong, something serious goes wrong in a nation. Education happens to be an equalizer because the child of the well-to-do and the child of the not-so-well-to-do can meet in a place, and they all get to meet in the same boardroom because of education. And that's why education happens to be very important, a reason for which Spotlight Uganda focuses on it this evening. Off we go. Thank you so much to our audiences, both here on our platforms as Next Media Services and at UBC, Uganda Broadcasting Corporation. I want to tell you education is important. If you ever doubted, listen to the profiles. If you want education, these profiles could have been completely different. But take education away, we could have had some wheelbarrow pushers in here and God knows what else. But let's just listen to the profiles, beginning with the profile of the permanent secretary, who is the leader of the team. I can tell you people are already smiling away. Let's get to the profiles.
Alex Kakoza is the permanent secretary at the Ministry of Education and Sports, a role he has held since October 2016. He is also the accounting officer of the ministry and therefore responsible for public funds proper expenditure. Before joining the Ministry of Education and Sports, Kakoza worked with the Ministry of Agriculture, Animal Industry and Fisheries as the Undersecretary for 2 years and with the Ministry of Works and Transport in a similar capacity for 7 years. Kakoza is a lawyer by profession with a particular interest in corporate law. He also has a master's degree in business administration from the University of Edinburgh, Scotland.
Mr. Pierce, would you want to greet our viewers?
Thank you very much, Mr. Kasumba. Good evening, viewers. I've been introduced. I'm Alex Kakoza. I'm pleased to be on this program tonight. Thank you.
And we're pleased to have you. Let's get to the next person on the panel.
Dr. Jane Egao Oko is the Director of Education in charge of higher education, teacher education and technical vocational education and training in the Ministry of Education and Sports, as well as a teacher by profession. Dr. Egao has amassed over 30 years of experience in the education sector in a career that has seen her lead several education initiatives and projects, both nationally and internationally. She holds both bachelor's and master's degrees in education from Malaria University and a PhD in workforce education and development from the Pennsylvania State University, USA.
Dr. Gao, do you want to greet our viewers?
Good evening, viewers. I'm happy to be here.
Let's continue to proceed down the list. It's what education does.
Mr. Ismail Mulindwa is a teacher by profession and currently the Director of Education in charge of basic and secondary education in the Ministry of Education and Sports, Uganda. Mr. Mulindwa is also the chairman of the Ministry of Education and Sports COVID-19 Task Force. He has over 30 years of experience in the education sector, and during his career in education, he has led a number of programs. He holds both a bachelor's and master's degree from Malaria University and Islamic University in Uganda, respectively.
Mr. Mulindwa, you want to greet our viewers as well? Okay, thank you. You want to do that again? Good. Let's go down the list as well.
Dr. Kedres Turiagenda is the Director of Education Standards in the Ministry of Education and Sports. She previously served as a Commissioner of Secondary Education Standards, a tutor and trainer of chemistry teachers at National Teachers College, a head teacher of Chinyasano Girls High School, and teacher of chemistry and mathematics at Bweranyanji Girls High School. Kedres holds a PhD in Education Management, a Master of Science from Leicester, UK, a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry and Mathematics with a concurrent diploma from Malaria University. She has presented papers in conferences and workshops in Uganda and abroad. She is a role model for young ladies in academic and Christian life. She is a motivational and inspirational speaker who loves education with a passion and inspires her team at the Directorate of Education Standards to ensure that every child learns effectively.
Dr. Triagenda, please greet our viewers.
Good evening, viewers. I'm glad to be here.
Fantastic. And looks like we've not gone through the entire team. Let's have last but by no means least.
Dr. Cleophas Muchenyi is the Commissioner of Basic Education at the Ministry of Education and Sports and a teacher by profession and calling. He has taught in several schools and held positions of responsibility all the way from his time at Birembo Primary School to being the District Education Officer of Chibale District. Dr. Mugenyi has also served as the Commissioner Teacher Education Standards at the Ministry of Education and Sports. He holds a PhD in Education Policy and Institutional Management from the University of Manchester. His passion is in improving the quality of education provision in Uganda.
Dr. Mugenyi, you want to greet our viewers as well?
Good evening, viewers. I'm happy to be on this program.
Good. The Ministry of Education is not leaving no stone unturned, so for the first time we also have a substitute bench, those on standby, and that does include Mr. Brighton Bargahari, and he is an Assistant Commissioner Policy. I understand he does know his policy quite well, and he also has a very good background in law. You want to greet our viewers as well?
Good evening, viewers. I'm happy to be here.
Happy to have you. And last but by no means least is Mr. Omari Apita, who is a Commissioner of Sports. He will be talking deeply about sport. He's certainly dressed like a top sports coach.
Good evening, viewers. It's a pleasure to be on this show.
Okay. So, for those of you watching, those who have academic papers picked up on Nasser and Nkrumah didn't make it on the show. This is a show for very serious professionals. And we kick off from where we should, from the Permanent Secretary. Mr. Kakoza, just walk us through very briefly the mandate of the ministry and what you're doing about efficiency and effectiveness. You could also squeeze in how education can be accessed and some bit on making sure that we have quality. Basically, a bird's eye view.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kasumba. Mr. Kasumba, the Minister of Education and Sports is charged with ensuring that we provide quality education and sports to the children of this country. The ministry has 4 directorates. It's a huge ministry. 4 directorates, and we have almost 20 departments. The ministry is charged with ensuring that we provide pre-primary education. By provision, it means we ensure that we regulate pre-primary, because as you're aware, government does not directly provide pre-primary education, but we regulate. We make sure that we have a good curriculum for our nursery kids. We ensure that we have the caregivers, who we call also the teachers of pre-primary, and we ensure that the children learn in a good environment. So that is as far as pre-primary is concerned. We also are charged with ensuring that we provide primary education. In primary education, we have both universal primary education, but we also provide education that is in private schools, but also in schools, government schools that are not, universal primary education schools. And what do we do here? Again, we provide regulation. We ensure access. Ensuring access means that we build schools. We provide teachers. We train teachers for primary schools. We also ensure that we provide the quality. Quality goes with books. Quality goes with good teaching in these schools. So that is primary. Then we have the secondary education. Secondary education is also provided both by public and by private schools. You talked about ensuring access. Again, under secondary school, we ensure that each parish has a school. That is our aim, although sometimes we have a few parishes that are still without. So we ensure that schools are accessible to learners. That means that we have infrastructure. It means that we bring schools nearer to where the children or the learners are supposed to be. And as I've already stated, that goes to the government policy of ensuring that every sub-county in this country has a government secondary school. And as we speak now, we have a number of projects that are aimed at ensuring that we have a secondary school in every sub-county. We have been doing this through grant aiding of secondary schools, through construction. This year, we have constructed 117 schools, and we expect that next year we shall be constructing 115, and another project we shall be building 116. Then, in terms of quality, we talk about the curriculum.
Okay.
That we should be able to provide a good curriculum that ensures that learners can appreciate, can pick skills, the relevant skills at a particular level of education in the lower secondary, and also that they have the teachers who can deliver the curriculum. So that is in terms of secondary. Then you have the tertiary education. Here we have TVET, as you may have heard. That's a term we use for technical vocation education training. And under TVET, we are basically talking about skilling of Ugandans. We skill in technical education, in health training, and in business. So that is the subsector of TVET. Then we have universities. What do we do in universities? I think everybody knows when we talk about higher education. What do we do? This is basically about universities in this country. We provide higher education through training of universities and other degree awarding institutions. Currently, we have more than 50 universities, both public and private. For public, we provide regulation, again, and for public, we provide more than regulation. We recruit teachers, we do construction of infrastructure, and we also provide the laws that govern these institutions. Then we have sports and physical education, and my colleague will be talking in details about sports. But we also have cross-cutting roles we play. For example, inspection, because as you know, we say you cannot get benefits from where you don't inspect. So we have the directorate, a whole directorate of inspection that helps us to ensure that education standards are implemented in our education training institutions. And then lastly, we train teachers and instructors across the entire country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the snapshot there. Let's dig deeper into quality of education, and we have a chance to have the Director of Education Standards here with us this evening. But before even we get there, we cannot go anywhere without discussing COVID-19, because if anything took us off education, it is COVID-19. So where are we as far as we are concerned, if we may, Dr. Turiagenda?
Thank you very much, Samson. I think my brother, Mr. Munindo, will talk about COVID-19. He's the chairperson of the task force.
Okay.
But I will address myself to the quality.
Okay.
As the Permanent Secretary has mentioned, our mandate, which is expressed in our vision as a sector, is to ensure that all learners in our schools and institutions receive quality education, training, and sports. And when we talk about quality of education, we really refer to holistic education.
Okay.
And this is clearly demonstrated in our curricula, because we look at the whole person, the education of the head, the cognitive knowledge, being able to learn, read, write, think, critique things, analyze them. That's one aspect. But we also look at education of the heart, the real person, the values, the attitudes, What informs you as an adult, what informs your participation and contribution to development of an individual and as a community and a country. But thirdly, we talk about the development of the hands, and the PS has just alluded to it. The whole aspect of skills, both the soft skills, teamwork and communication and all these, but also the hard skills. Okay. And so consequently, all our curricula now are competence-based, right from primary. From the thematic curriculum of P1 to P3 throughout the primary, the secondary lower curriculum, and indeed the upper A level is about to be reviewed, and the TVET, they are all competence-based.
Okay.
So to ensure that that happens, the Directorate of Education Standards sets standards. The first basic standard that we have is what we call the basic requirements and minimum standards, which looks at what should be in what is called a school. If a school is to be counted as a school, what are those basics? So we have 13 quality indicators in that. But we also have real quality indicators of processes, the teaching learning process, because we focus on the learner. Education is all about the learner. And as you said, indeed, it's the equalizer.
Okay.
If all learners learn in a conducive environment where they are loved, appreciated, guided, they can all achieve. Okay. So my directorate focuses on that in our inspection tools, in our inspection quality indicators, and in our work with local governments to ensure that both the pre-primary and the primary, which are fully decentralized, are receiving support.
So if I may, talking about critical thinking, how did we get to the place where a child who has a distinction in physics waits for their mom to return home to report that the flat iron broke down, they should take it to somebody to fix it, and they have a distinction in physics? How did we get there? Is it that somewhere along the way education was misunderstood to be it's about passing, cram the stuff, and you can regurgitate it in an exam, whether you understand its concepts or not? And it's also true that every time they release national examinations, it has been a complaint about students failing in exams to do with critical thinking.
You are very true, Samson. At some point along the way, we trailed off from what it should be. And our examination system became highly, our education system became highly examination-oriented. And the results that appear on someone's past slip and eventually go into the media, which I'm sure your teams do very well, took the center stage. And this became quite worsened by the liberalization and the introduction of private schools. Because in most cases, private schools look at results as a marketing strategy. So the more you can get children cram, the more you drill them and coach them and test them and test them and test them until they can reproduce whatever comes in an exam, the so-called better results that you'll be able to produce, the more parents you'd get, and so the more money. However, the revision of the curriculum and the various policies we are coming up with are coming to check on that.
Okay, maybe finally, still on that, I am uncomfortable, and I don't know if some of our viewers are, with a boy who is called a failure at physics. He moves out of the education system, goes somewhere, puts a pattern engine of a border, finds what's wrong with it, fixes it, and it moves again. That's physics. The system says he failed. The one who passed can't. Is that now where we're saying that those cannot still be called failures if they go out there and do physics?
True. Actually, that's part of the motivation for the curricular reviews that we have been looking at. We've been having exactly the same questions. Why should someone in Katwe who stopped at P5 be the one to repair the car of a professor of physics from Mackay University? So those are the things we are looking at, and we hope that we can now progress into having more people who are really educated, not just those who have crammed facts and passed exams.
Very interesting. Maybe after this conversation we'll be thinking about those we've been called. That one failed senior 6, but what is he doing after failing it? Did he actually fail, or he failed to fit into the system, which we're now thinking about reviewing? Mr. Mulindwa, let's talk COVID. How are we dealing with COVID? A, B, to what extent has COVID gotten us to rethink how we educate?
Thank you, Mr. Kasumba. And thank you, viewers. Mr. Kasumba, if there's any sector that was hit hard by COVID, it was Ministry of Education and Sports.
Okay.
And why? Because Ministry of Education is in charge of millions and millions of our young people who are striving to get a future. So when COVID set in, we had really also to wake up. We didn't leave us lying. No, we said no. COVID has set in, we have to confront it. How did we do this? We started by, of course, coming up with a plan of how we are going to address issues of COVID. But before then, you remember that these learners had gone back home. So we got concerned. We said 15 million learners back home to do what? And our key objective here, we wanted to keep them in shape, keep them focused. So we came up with a plan, and we started on engaging them wherever they were at the time. We came up with the programs, some of which you might have seen them here, by having programs on radio and TV. We even endeavored to supply them with the materials at their homes. So that was a very long journey to keep them focused, because we wanted to engage them. There are quite a number of pressures which could have derailed them from their objective. We said, no, let's do whatever it takes to keep them focused. So with these many interventions, and remember, COVID came in at a time when we are almost completing our financial year. And what does it mean? We had not prepared like any other sector. But we worked within the means to make sure our learners are engaged where they are. Until when it came to a time, and you remember, we even kept promising we are going to reopen schools. But this COVID was a new phenomenon in our education system. We didn't know how to confront it. And every the other day, you would have things changing. You remember we started by having a zero kind of case. Then the cases continued increasing. So that affected our plan somehow. Okay. Because we thought at one point in time we would be reopening schools as soon as possible. It didn't come to pass. So we had to take a decision later after some good month and said, okay, now the situation is a bit stabilizing. Let's now call in those who are at the verge of completing their cycles.
Okay.
And we didn't do it by chance. No, we said, let our inspectorate reach out to the schools and find out, are they capable of receiving these sub-candidates, the candidates? And the report we got then was that we could have the candidates back to school. And thank God, at least we managed. We didn't have, by the way, serious cases.
Okay.
You can't mention many. And we had the candidates going back to school. Okay. And that informed our subsequent decisions of having more classes on board. So by and large, I would want to say that the situation is bad, yes, but it's not as bad as we had thought. Because the schools were prepared, we guided them, and they managed, they contained the situation.
Okay.
That's why you see now more classes are coming on board, and more are still coming back.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't know about other viewers, but these are the questions I hear from my house, because my children think I know everything since I'm in the media. Now, let me raise the questions on their behalf. You spoke about the candidates, and that's somebody I have at home sitting primary 7 this month, and she's been asking, Daddy, am I going to S1? How about those in S1 already? Will they leave so we join? Are there some classes that have taken dead years? So then I've got this one in P1 that does not know whether they are going to P2. I've got one in S2 who does not know whether they are going to S3 or not. But we know that the school year has changed. Can you sort of elaborate so that parents understand? We could begin with the one in P7 after they are finished. When do they go back to S1? After those in S1 have moved, when?
Yes, Mr. Kasumbi, in principle, we agreed we are not going for a dead year. In principle, we took a decision. And by that, we had to make sure we manage to have our learners moving from one level to another. How? That's why you are seeing P7 sitting, Senior 4 sitting, and Senior 6 sitting. What does it mean? When they sit, they are creating a vacuum.
Okay.
And that vacuum has to be filled.
Okay.
And they also have to move forward.
Yes.
So a learner who is in P1 now, when it comes to July, will be moving to the next class. So you'll have now a new P1. The same applies to
Senior 1.
Senior 1.
They will move in July.
And Senior 5.
Okay.
So our academic year 2020, incidentally, is ending in July.
Okay.
Come August, we shall be going for now another new academic year.
Okay.
So there will be movement. The worry here has been that how are they moving to the next class? Will they have...
What are they taking in their heads to the next class?
Exactly. Will they have covered? And we are saying, no, our curriculum is spiral. So what we are saying, cover what you can, and if you still have a luggage to carry, you can carry it to the next class and be able to cover it there.
So it's reckless for anyone to say that we are operating under Kanagwera Mweyo.
Not Kanagwera Mweyo, my dear. Not.
Let's leave it there. Within the process, it will be fixed.
Mr. Kasumba, you must have been in a situation in
Yes.
your school career
Yes.
that at one point in time you were in a class and you did not cover a certain topic.
I agree, yes.
Is that okay?
It has happened.
And it was possible then to cover that topic in that next class, which you are moving to. So we shall have movement, classes will move, and we shall have classes graduating into new classes.
Okay.
So there is no backlog to say you are going to cause a jam. No, there's no jam that is going to be caused.
Okay.
Since there is movement, and the other learners will be able to join those other classes. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Those of you watching us here on our platforms and on UBC, and the breaking news is that there is jam on our streets, but not in the education sector. That is breaking news. Let's get into understanding matters early childhood development. Doc, where are we on that? It seems that that sector is quite an interesting one because it sort of forms the foundation. We now do know that for very understandable reasons, these young persons can't wear their masks. If they do, they can't wear them properly. Anyone who has tried to give them a handkerchief knows the challenge with that. But again, there are also persons who are working, and their only way out, away from the mess that house helps can be, was to leave children at daycare centers and all. Those are struggling. What's the plan?
Thank you very much, Samson. As the Permanent Secretary said in his introduction, pre-primary is the foundation of formal education. What happens is that pre-primary determines the future and the chances of success of a learner in other levels. It is unfortunate that because of COVID-19 pandemic, all the nursery schools are closed. Daycare centers are closed. And a couple of weeks ago, the proprietors of ECD centers in this country had an opportunity to meet the First Lady, who is also the Minister of Education and Sports, in the State House to discuss the plight of the proprietors of ECD centers, as well as the parents, caregivers, so that they would be able to agree on the way forward. This issue was exhaustively discussed, and the First Lady promised to get back to them after, of course, consulting especially the scientific team that guides the president on taking decisions regarding the opening of schools and institutions. Samson, as you know, the younger kids are more prone to COVID-19 because they cannot put on a mask. So it is important that the parents take the responsibility of looking after their children, providing them with basic education at home as we wait for the situation to improve, so that the ECD centers can be opened and then we shall operate normally.
Okay, that's right. But still staying on early childhood development, some say, fair or unfair, that by and large, your first contact, at least for majority of Ugandans, with an educator will more likely be in a kindergarten where the instructor is there because they couldn't do anything else, or they failed with their first choice at education and they were relegated to that. Unlike in other places where I have staggered, where the first contact for an educator for one of my children, actually two, was a PhD instructor in early childhood education. Is what I am saying the situation, or am I reporting something from Mars?
I think the situation is not as alarming as you are trying to portray it.
Okay.
What has happened is that the Ministry of Education and Sports, with support from partners like the World Bank, UNICEF, and a couple of NGOs, have supported the training of untrained caregivers so that they are able to give them some basic knowledge and skills to be able to handle these younger kids. And for that matter, a number of them have been trained and given certificates of competence.
Okay.
And that's why the Ministry of Education is now requiring them to register as nursery teachers. The Ministry of Education cannot register incompetent teachers.
Good.
So these teachers have been subjected to training. They have been offered some continuous professional courses to ensure that they meet the basic standards of teaching in the ECD centers, taking care of children in the kindergartens, so that really the parents or the guardians are assured that the kind of education being provided is of a certain standard.
Okay, and Piers, coming in here in terms of regulation, every so often somebody opens up anti-so-and-so kindergarten, uncle so-and-so nursery school. They are all over the place. Now we've even moved to daycare centers. Inspection and regulation. I know the task is hard, but are we on it?
Thank you very much, Samson. Samson, before I get to that regulation, I wanted to add something on what Dr. Cleophas has stated, and arising out of your statement that those who are teaching in pre-primary are basically those who are failed to do other things. We are professionalizing teaching in this country, and you may have heard of the teacher policy, which I have written. Now, under that policy, we want to make sure that a teacher, we have all teachers who are teaching at any level are professional, and you only specialize. So the teacher who taught your kid in pre-primary with a PhD came out of a system where teachers are professionally regulated. Mm-hmm. Now, in this country, when we implement our teacher policy, teachers will specialize and decide whether he wants to be a teacher of pre-primary, a teacher of primary school, a teacher of a secondary school, or a teacher of a university. And you can have any qualification up to a PhD at any of these levels. So you'll have Mr. Samson, your kid now in Uganda, having a teacher with a PhD in a pre-primary school, and will give that kid the best education, because as we have said, pre-primary is the foundation of learning in any system. So what are we doing about...
So in that regard then, because of any building, if you get the foundation wrong, the chances of correcting are nil. if you get the foundation right up along the building, you get issues, you can break down to the foundation and begin again. So are we probably in the coming days, weeks or months able to say that it's going to be very difficult for anybody unprofessional to teach kids at the foundational level?
Those two, one, the curriculum, secondly, the caregivers, and then the licensing of these schools, wherever they open, will ensure that we have quality pre-primary education that is approved by the Ministry of Education and Sports.
Thank you very much, and I know that we will also sink in, because sometimes you look at kids at the same level. One was told it is A, another was told it is A. Then phonetics and vowels and all, it can be a very interesting one. But I'm glad that we are walking in the right direction. Once somebody is walking, they're better than those standing still. Dr. Jen Egao Oko, I hope I've not murdered names here. We will then blame my nursery teacher. But for now, the Director of Education in charge of higher education, teacher education, technical and vocational education and training, the longest title here of the evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Just before we get into matters, scholarships, which people keep asking about scholarships, are they about education, or is it a combination of your abilities in the brain and a technical know-who and know-how? But we will first ask matters to do with your passion and docket vocational education. For some reason, and I might be wrong here, for some reason people think that if you stop at a certain point and sideway into vocational education, you were sold short. To be honest, I thought so until I traveled elsewhere and found out that, for instance, in the UK, they've got what they call MVQ. It's a very, very huge course. People go into it, and how I found out was somebody at work was asking me what I'm doing. I said, I'm doing a degree. They said, what's a degree? I said, I'm doing a master's degree. They said, what's that? I said, what you do after a degree? What's a degree? Now, I didn't know what to explain in England, what a degree is, because I thought everybody in England knows these things. But then I found out they'd done MVQ, and there are several levels. Are we at the place where we should stop patronizing people who have chosen vocational over the other path?
Thank you very much, Mr. Kasumba. That's exactly where we are going. We are undergoing serious reforms in the BTVET subsector. You are aware, and as you have already said, for a very long time, people thought that is for failures. And indeed, up to today, some people think so. But what we are seeing now is a change in position. We now have people going to universities, they do whatever courses they've done, they come back and take vocational courses because they realize with the skills they have, they are not able to get employed. So we are actually reforming the entire BTVET subsector. The new TVET policy that we have, that was approved in last year, is bringing in a lot of reforms. We are going to move away from. We are going to do a lot of sensitization, first of all, to promote the image of the BTVET subsector. We are also going to do a lot in terms of changing curriculum, in terms of equipping people with the skills that are necessary, in terms of relating our curriculum to the world of work, so that people begin to see TVET as the place to go. What you have talked about in UK, Germany, in Japan, that's actually, people take this as a first choice. And we are looking for that opportunity. In the reforms that we are talking about, we want to see people take vocational education as a choice.
Okay.
So we will continue the sensitization and move in that direction.
Will that include employers? Because we have employers who insist university degree and so on and so forth. Why can't we change that down to abilities? And maybe if we insist here, some even wonder if your abilities are in tailoring and so on and so forth. If you get off at P7 and you concentrate on that, you might be a long way until you go to the university, get no job, then come back and find out that that's what you wanted to do. The other person who left off at P7 has a booming business.
But that's already happening, actually, and people are already beginning to realize that's the case. And what we are now, even with employers, by the way, even the employers are beginning to realize that certificates are not it all. They need the skills. Many of them are now looking for, they say you rather take somebody who is able to work than somebody who has, got those certificates and degrees.
Okay.
So there is a trend which is now changing towards skills rather than academic papers. And that's exactly what this policy is about. We want a paradigm shift from papers to competencies.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm not so sure how to deal with vocational training institutions being turned into universities. That doesn't help too much, because having studied around Chambogo College School, I used to walk into a technical institution. I'm not so sure it's still technical anymore. It's now also called Main Street University. Mr. Kakoza wants to answer that, maybe after you. You go first, then Mr. Kakoza can add.
I wanted to say that, yes, that's just one,
Okay.
Chambogo University. But we have a lot of technical vocational institutions around the country. There are actually over 140, and they are all over. But we are also developing what we are calling a technical university.
Okay.
So maybe the Chambogo that you thought about that time will soon come with the new policy.
Thank you very much, Doc. Mr. Kakoza, you want to chip in?
Thank you so much. First of all, we are not converting universities. I mean technical institutions or technical colleges into universities. We are not. But that happened, you are talking about Chambogo Polytechnic that used to have to be there one time. It hasn't happened again. Instead, now we are emphasizing technical colleges and technical institutes. You may have noted that we have about 6 centers of excellence, which we have created, and these have been put on international standards through development of internationally accredited curriculum. We have instructors who have been trained on international scale, on international level, to deliver the curriculum. We have equipment that can deliver that curriculum, and then we have the infrastructure. And this has been done with the advice of institutions, international institutions, that are helping us to have these institutions accredited.
Okay.
And as a result, we have had these institutions offering internationally recognized certificates. One of them is Uganda Petroleum Institute now, specializing in oil and gas. And that institution shall remain a technical college, basically to give us technicians that can deliver training in oil and gas, to support skilling in the oil industry. Then we have others that are specializing in construction, like Chamba, manufacturing in Ushenyi Technical College, Elgon in road construction, and others.
Okay.
So it's not true that we are converting these institutions. But as Dr. Gao has stated, we are trying, and you mentioned it, what we are doing under the TVET reforms, we want to make sure that TVET can be entered at any level and you can move at any stage. So if, for example, you finished P7 and you want to go into skilling, you join, you get a certificate, You can go for level 1, you can go for level 2, level 3, you can go to a diploma after S4 or S6, and then you study up to PhD as a technician.
Okay.
Because that's what affected our people who in the past went to Kyambogo. Because when you go to Kyambogo, you do an ordinary diploma, then you go for a higher diploma, and then you branch. You go to Makerere to do a bachelor's in civil engineering, when actually you are supposed to be a technician.
Okay.
So we have a deliberate policy to ensure that we develop TVET, and I think we are doing it. We are also doing it with the employers, because you are saying, where do we bring the employers? Now, the employers have are now part of us. They are involved in the development of the curriculum. They tell us the kind of skills they want to see in our trainees. So we work with them to develop the curriculum, and then we train these employees to have the skills that meet the requirements of the employees, of the employers. And the result is that the people who get off our training institutions are quite more employable, easily employable, or they can employ themselves.
Okay.
Recently, I was getting a story from the head of UPIC, and he was saying all the people who trained in his institution recently and got attached, all of them were absorbed, including someone who had not completed his exams.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And let's switch subjects here. Some time ago, we had a very unfortunate change. The learner became a client. And once a learner became a client, then they became untouchable, because if you chase them away, you have a bank loan. That's private education. And they're mushrooming everywhere. In a school I know, I won't mention, an instructor told a learner that they can't use their mobile phone in class. The learner shot back, saying that that phone was not one he could afford or anyone in the family could afford. They came screaming and insulting the instructor all the way to the staff room. The parent of the learner had 4 kids in that school. They're paying in dollars. If you send them away, you have a huge challenge. How are we going to regulate private education now that the facilitators or the providers of it, we are not sure whether they are more interested in the money in the education, or they're actually passionate about educating? And they're everywhere. You hear people saying, "Tandike somero muli musente." That's the worst way to get in here.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kasumba. First of all, I think we opened our gates so wide.
That's honest.
By liberalization. When we liberalized the education in this country, these are the effects, some of the effects. But as a sector, of course, we are also concerned, and I want to admit, at times we will find a school on top of another, and we are not sitting back. We have, over time, realized there is something that needs to be fixed. And what are we doing? As I talk now, we are developing a policy to regulate private provision of education in this country. Yeah, because we thought there was a gap. We have the law, we have the act, but it's not that comprehensive to address the many, many areas that we need to address. So we hope with that policy, all those issues you were mentioning, a learner becoming a client, will, I think at some point will be regulated. Okay. And I want to share this with you, that in the past we used to give or to license these schools and give them a permanent kind of, give them a blank check. And one would have his registration, carry it even on his head, go and establish a school somewhere. And even to a point of saying, give me money here, I give you this certificate and you start a school. So some of the things we are doing as we wait to have that policy in place, we are even saying that the law allows us to say if you are going to be registered, you are registered for a certain period of time.
Okay.
Like you have these licenses given. After that period has expired, we come back and say, are you still up to the standard? The inspectorate will go there to find out, are you the kind of school that was just looking after money? If the answer is yes, then we may hold on our renewal of the certificate or license. But where you have really performed and you have really toward the line of providing education, because it's a service, then we shall renew the license and registration. All these are done to make sure that we fix some of the gaps that are there that are making schools behave like shops.
Okay. Would I be right to assume that if I find a school, it is sitting on a 50 by 100 plot, skyscrapers, no playground and all, that most probably that one stole a license?
No, let me clarify on this. Let me clarify. There are areas, I'll give you an example.
Yes.
Take an example of Kivulu.
Yes.
Kivulu, by its population, needs a school. And there's no way you can get land of 5 acres which we require for a school to be started, to say you must provide 5 acres in order to start a school. There are circumstances where you can have a school in a small place where you may not have that big space, right? But the standard should be for the where the facilities can allow.
Okay.
So you cannot say is it stolen? No, there are situations where you can have a school in a small space and it is desirable.
Okay, when we come back from the break, we will be asking the question, to what extent must you cut on quality to accommodate quantity as you get into the whole business of education? Maybe at the end of the day you can ask whether Ugandan education did a good job with the moderator for the evening, or is it to be blamed? All that when we come back from this break. See you in a bit.
That education is the heartbeat of Uganda's future. Others, well, that it is simply life, that education is the only way to ensure that tomorrow's generations are well nurtured. From school conditions across the country all the way to scholarships and more, Uganda's Ministry of Education and Sports is placed under the spotlight, under the theme Progress of Uganda's Education. Panelists will include Permanent Secretary Alex Kakoza, Director Education Standards Dr. Kedros Turiagenda, Director Basic and Secondary Education Ismail Mulindwa, Commissioner Basic Education Dr. Cleophas Mugenyi, and Director Higher Technical Vocational Education and Training Dr. Jen Egao. Hosted by Samson Kasumba. This Monday, 22nd March 2021 at 10 p.m. Spotlight UG, live on UBC Television.
Kapo, you seem to be in a hurry. Where are you going to?
I'm gonna pay URA visit.
But you can access URA online. Why pay a visit?
To know more about the Kakasa business solutions, namely digital tracking solution, the voluntary disclosure program, and electronic fiscal receipting and invoicing solution, which have turned my business around. You know I need to be on top of my game to protect my empire. If you know, you know.
I too need to know what Kapo knows.
Kakasa, be sure you are in charge of your business. Uganda Revenue Authority, developing Uganda together.
Wait.
No one should stop you from finishing what's yours. That's why MTN gives you data bundles that don't expire. Load MTN Freedom bundles using My MTN app and enjoy the freedom to finish your data bundles.
MTN.
Today tastes like a new tradition. like an old favorite. Tastes like all hands on deck and all eyes on the prize. Today tastes like a piece of the action. And it never tasted this good.
Water and environment means different things to different people. Did you know that water is the foundation of life, societies, and economies? Did you know that the environment plays an important role in healthy living and existence of the earth? What does water and environment mean to you? Be part of the Uganda Water and Environment Week 2021, themed Water and Environment Security for Social, Economic Transformation of Uganda. The Uganda Water and Environment Week, starting 21st to 26th March 2021. The guest of honor will be the Right Honorable Prime Minister of the Republic of Uganda, Dr. Ruhakana Rugunda. Join us as we discuss the importance of optimal utilization and management of water and environment resources for sustainable socio-economic transformation for all.
That's their way of stopping HIV. What about you?
It's no secret that ICT makes learning easy.
The strides made in our field could not be possible without it.
And now we can watch our favorite shows.
My radio is my best friend.
UCC provides an enabling regulatory environment and policy guidance for healthy competition. We also facilitate ease of doing business in the communications sector through license.
Some argue that education is the heartbeat of Uganda's future. Others, well, that it is simply life, that education is the only way to ensure that tomorrow's generations are well nurtured. From school completions across the country,
in proud partnership with the big one. We're talking the national broadcaster here, UBC. Thank you so much for partnering with us. And we're dealing with a matter that affects all of us, and that is education. As I said earlier, if you have the foundation wrong, and no matter how high the building goes, then you are going to have to repeat the foundation. And for what we do know, it is a very interesting conversation. Now, if you just joined us, I can recap on you. There is a lot of review going on, and a lot of patience will be required. We are a growing nation, and much of what we're doing is growing, and thankfully we do have all the experts here. The team is led by the permanent secretary of the ministry, who is seated in the center, and on his wings all sorts of directors, and there are PhDs and PhDs here, and a lot of experience on the night. And in case you needed any rider here, everybody here has their PhD from a certified institution. We made sure that we checked those ones just before we brought them in. We've got PhDs coming from all sorts of streets. By the way, I will confess, I worked on Nasser Road 10 years. Nothing to take away from this conversation. My documents are legit. So let's get into matters of the evening here. And maybe to begin off, somebody has asked here on social media, and I'll put the question just before we forget it. It's Irene Kagoya, who is saying there have been increased reports of teenage pregnancies, with many girls attending Okay, unfortunately, what are the plans for implementing the new guidelines on teenage pregnancy and re-entry into schools? Sometimes it feels as if getting pregnant is a punishment, and the girl child usually comes off worse. The boy child sort of staggers and continues if he can.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kasumba. Like I said at the beginning, if there's any sector that was affected by COVID, more is education. A sizable number of our learners are fallen victims of different kind of pressures, and one of the category is the girl child. Many of our girls out there are falling to the hawks, if I can say, without fear. And many of them have been impregnated against their will. There is no, among these many that are reported, there is no planned pregnancy to say that during COVID I will get pregnancy. But they were forced into that kind of situation, and they yielded. So it was an accident, if I can say, and no one can be blamed for that. The only thing we need to do is to help them at least secure their future. That's very, very important. Having, of course, been made aware that it happened against their will. But as a ministry, we had already planned for this. And many people out there don't know that many things that happen are planned for. We knew we would have one or two fall to this kind of, finding herself in this kind of situation. And we had started on guidelines to guide on how, in case one becomes pregnant, what happens. And for that reason, we provided guidelines to guide them against this kind of situation, so that they are given skills, so that they are able to guard against that kind of thing. But at the same time, provided those guidelines provide some kind of an entry point, which we call the re-entry guidelines. So within the teenage pregnancy guidelines, we have the re-entry guidelines. In case one falls to this kind of situation, what do we do? And we agreed as a sector, as a ministry, because we knew that these girls are forced into these situations. We said we should be able to give a second chance to this young girl so that she can go back to school. We should not appear like we are promoting this kind of situation in schools, that girls are at liberty to become what? Pregnant. But in case it happens, we give that girl a second chance. And our guidance are very clear. You go, nurse your pregnancy, give birth, and then you can come back to the school system. Okay. That chance can be given. And given on the basis that that girl got pregnancy against her will. We are not saying mothers in homes are also at liberty to have this kind of chance.
Okay.
Yes.
And some say that, given what we now know, that those who are asked to go back and nurse and return, what percentage ever returns?
Yeah.
And sometimes some argue that that's the beginning of stopping that girl from the cycle of education, because before she returns, there's another one. And then she's a nalongo. And then it's very difficult to ever come back.
Yeah, Mr. Kasumba, we need to appreciate one fact here, that in the past we used to lose so many.
Okay.
The moment one got pregnancy, it was forbidden. Would go back and never come back to school. But we are doing whatever it takes now to encourage them to come back. And that's why recently you must have heard girls coming out to demand and say, I must do my exams, I must register. So with this kind of empowerment, men are coming now back to the school system, which never used to happen before.
Okay.
So yes, we may lose one or two, but majority of them now with this kind of intervention where we are providing for them and of course fighting even stigma, because what used, by the way, to keep them out of school when they got pregnant is because of stigma. They will come back to school system and be stigmatized. But we are working on this, and we are telling even the teachers, this can happen. If it happens, please give this young girl a second chance. That's why we came up with the guidelines.
So if I understand you right, if she is the type that doesn't care about stigma, can she register with her gift from God, if we may argue, because the Bible says all children are from God? Can she register and sit her exam? Or the policy is that, no, have your child and come back?
Yeah, you know, every good thing comes with some kind of a condition. There are conditions, of course.
Okay. So
when
she can't sit.
When one gets pregnancy, or pregnant, she can go nurse her pregnancy. Then at the time of exams, she can come back and do her exams. There is even a time period we give.
Okay.
Beyond 6 months, you can't, of course, come and sit in class with the rest of the learners. And why? Schools are not health institutions.
Okay, true. But you see, what I have here on social media, somebody is saying, look, the situation here is the pregnancy belongs to somebody else. Sometimes, because of her age, somebody took advantage. And it's not entirely her fault, but she pays the ultimate price, loses a year, and then comes back. But maybe what I hear you saying is that, again, you also have to think about the other children to protect them from thinking the school entertains this kind of behavior. That balance is what I hear you saying, that balance is a very difficult one to get right.
It's not very difficult. It's not only because of stigma, but this pregnant girl here, how would she be managed in school?
Yeah, I'll tell our viewers there's no pregnant girl here. It's just an illustration being given, yes.
So that's why we advise and say, please keep at home for this period of time.
Okay.
When you deliver, then you can come back to the school system.
Yes. Mr. Kakoza, did you want to chip in?
No, I was basically...
We'll bring in somebody on policy here as well.
I was basically saying pregnancy is more than an education issue.
Okay.
It's a health issue. So we recommend that when a girl is 6 months pregnant, it will not be advisable really to be in school, because other health issues can crop in that we cannot handle as an education sector. So we recommend that she goes, out of school. But they can come and do
with the involved boy as well.
Yes, the boy, we say after the girl has given birth, the boy should also go out.
Because the question will be, if she's leaving, why is he staying?
We are saying the boy also goes out.
Okay.
And
so as soon as the girl leaves, you also go?
The boy also leaves, and he comes back when the girl is coming back. Of course, some people have felt like we are punishing the boy. Why does the boy go out?
He's responsible.
But we feel he should also go out.
Okay.
And we shouldn't be like encouraging, such behavior in school.
Okay, so the boys have been saying, look, me, I'm healthy, I'm not carrying the pregnancy, so why am I going? Well, you are responsible for it.
But it needs to be cancelled. So this period of time when he's not in school also, he's out there being also prepared.
Hopefully not taking advantage of other girls he finds on the street, given the fact that we already know he's problematic. But let's also talk about congestion. And I want to bring in Mr. Brighton Barugahari here, who is somebody in charge of policy. What is the policy on numbers? And the reason I ask this is I do know that we have been hit by quite a number of fires. And in places where there are triples, I know that there is what is on the books as far as triples. We're talking about, I'm not so sure it's right to say triple deckers, but I've heard of double deckers. But now that we also have COVID, it has brought in the issue of space. And nobody in the world sure knows whether this is the first pandemic or the last one. And in case there's another, we need to be resilient enough to deal with. How are we going to deal with congestion? Factoring in that we have also many private players who have got to maximize profit while also pretending to educate in some cases.
Thank you very much, Samson. We are considering a number of policies, especially the congestion moves more into the area of quality, and already we have embarked on a process of developing an education quality assurance policy, which will go beyond the 13 quality indicators, but also which will also be combined with the private provision of education policy, because it is actually more common in private institutions, because for them every space earns money, and we think according to the Education Act, government has a responsibility in private education institution through regulation, and the intention of government to expand access to education can only be brought to reality through instruments which include the legal framework but also the policy framework. So those policies now are underway to basically insist that if you are going to come into the education as a stakeholder, you must be regulated. And our standards are going to be strict to ensure that there is adequate space, both in the classroom and the accommodation places in the library, to make sure that these standards are a reality. Without a policy, it has been very hard to enforce standards in accommodation. Most schools have been denying parents access to places of accommodation. They say this is out of bounds, because as a government you can't force yourself into the dormitory. So we have considered it important to come up with policy instruments that empower all our officials, wherever they are, to make sure that they have instruments that back their actions, and we streamline that. We're also going to strengthen, I think, infrastructure, and we are also going to bring on board local government, because education at a much lower level is a decentralized service. But many times when there are issues, the Ministry of Education becomes the center of focus, and the districts, we will encourage them to budget. We will also encourage them to make sure they put in place standards and also check their licensing procedures, because some of them are licensed at a lower level, and we think through these policies we will tighten what eventually becomes a school meets the standards as envisaged by the education.
It is a large ministry, but one of the key dockets it does hold is the docket of sport, and it would be unfair for a nation like ours that does produce gold medals lately ever so often not to be discussing sport. And I would like to bring in Mr. Omari Apita here to discuss sport. In some jurisdictions, they already have started to take a footballer into a footballing school, so that he doesn't have to make a very difficult choice between formal education and football, which is also in itself part-time, whether that is football or athletics or tennis. Are we going there, or are we still saying struggle with your football if you can, if you know, at some point lose big careers in sport as people pretend want to become doctors? You know, if you are never here, never there, you are never anywhere.
Thank you.
Try that again.
Thank you, Mr. Kasumba. I think what you're asking about is professionalizing of our young people in schools. I can say that our underlying policy is that we want to provide these young people with both careers. Where you have talent, we want to support that talent development. But we don't want you to lose out on education, the academic education, because with sport, that talent will only take you so far. It could be beyond a certain age, for example. So you will need this academic qualification at a certain time.
And the challenge is that if you look at some of the top sports people, at least at international level. If you look at people like in tennis, Rafael Nadal, or you look at Roger Federer, you look at these boys, most of the time they spent it in a specifically sports education center, so that the education was leaning highest on sport and least on what you'd call class work, class work, as it were. Don't you think that we are going to have to go there if we want, for instance, a Ugandan boy who is in, say, Chibuli, or a Ugandan girl in Nabisunsa to compete with Serena Williams, who at 5 or 6 is already professionalizing in tennis? It might be a tall order, isn't it?
What you're talking about is what we have already thought about, and we have actually started with a framework to have at the, I will tell you that we have 3 tiers in a pyramid shape of sports development. At the center is talent development, and which is between the ages of, say, 13 to 19. Now here we want, and we have established 13 sports schools. These are centers of excellence.
Fantastic.
Where we think and we wish the talented young people should go to, and where the curriculum, where the support there will be more on their talent development, but they'll be having an education also. So we have 32 sports schools, which we are just working to promote and make it really more like an academy. And that's what you are talking about.
So are we saying that in future we don't like to hear parents saying, stop playing football, it's not going to take you anywhere, this is what you need to do? And you're talking a parent that also wants to support the national football team, and they're stopping that talent from developing. Because that's, some have said, I know people from Chambogo College School, fantastic defender, but he had to make a choice between furthering his career as a football defender and trying to become an engineer. And in the process, we got the engineer at the expense of a defender.
For now, I can tell you that we don't want to inhibit or to cut anybody's talent. A recent example, we've been at the Under-20 AFCON Championships tournament recently. And I think you may have heard it, may have come through your media services.
It definitely did.
Yes. There were students who had to play in the tournament. And there were professional managers abroad who had promised them if they did well in these tournaments, they would be taken for professional football. We did not stop them from playing and not sitting exams because we didn't want to inhibit anybody's talent.
Okay, that's a big one. So you're saying that you let the student go to a tournament that can't wait, then when they come back we say, okay, fine, you were not around for the national exam, but we can understand the national contribution you're making and look after that. Is that the direction we're taking? I want to understand whether I had you right.
When they go out, yes, they are on national duty. When they are in the national team representing Uganda, they are on national duty. Okay,
fantastic. Because we also don't want somebody to be hiding around playing a football tournament and dodging an exam intentionally. Coming back here, maybe if we will, on education standards, one would ask, where do we lean most, especially ever since we brought in UPE and USE? Are we leaning most on quantity because we are coming from a place and cutting down on quality, saying first let's get everybody in, then we will, with time, because that's also a gain, then with time go into quality issues? Or are we taking both?
Well, I think that's what happened from the beginning. When this government, which is in, came in, we had had about 20 years of turbulence as a country. Our economy had gone quite low, and yet the social services were needed because while the economy was going in the negative, the population was growing. So by the time we thought we need to stabilize ourselves, we had very many people fit to go to school, but with schools not having increased since the colonial times. So by the time they introduced liberalization and private schools, that's where we were. And so consequently, like we said at the beginning, we had people opening garages and calling it auntie whoever nursery school and uncle whoever school, because we had so many young people wishing to go to school, and yet government couldn't provide that as its responsibility is. But as I speak now, I think we are reaching an equilibrium. And so coming up with these policies now to wake people up and say, look at what the law provides. Because a lot of private schools, just Kasumba decides, since I have a piece of land, let me put this temporary shade, call people around me, and incidentally Ugandans think that private means good. I think that we shall discuss another day.
Okay.
So whether there are seats there, whether there's a floor that is made, or whether there are textbooks, or whether the teachers are trained or not, children are pulled out of government schools, which have everything, and put in these schools. So we are saying that we are now at an equilibrium. We have enough schools around us, and there's no reason why we should now go against what the law says. Because the law says if you have to start a private school, you apply to the permanent secretary, you have people to show that you are fit to do that, you have the money required, everything is done, then you go and start construction, then you come back and ask for a license. But people have just been starting, and then we've been doing post-mortem to go, now that there are school children in school, are they meeting the basic requirements? But now with the policies coming up, and with the fact that we now have enough schools, and you know that from the last season of government that is ending in May, His Excellency had promised at least a primary school per parish and a secondary school per sub-county, as the permanent secretary said, and we are still moving towards that progressively. So we think that eventually we shall have enough schools in the actually, so that people don't have to go and sleep on the 3 beds that you were talking about, which are against the standards, because the maximum should be 2 beds, that is a double decker. And with now COVID and space, we definitely are going to use that opportunity. We are using it already, because to allow schools to start with candidates, when we went out as inspection, both from the center and the local government, it was very strict that a bed had to have 1 person, the social distance had to be observed, and so people are beginning to realize that these things are critical and we have to use them. So moving forward, I think we shall stabilize and get a proper system.
Government does provide quality education. Some argue that the challenge is not enough. I don't know whether you know the mess of trying to get into Nabisunsa, Nabingo, Namagunga, Gayaza. It's just a small group of schools, and if I got my facts right, they were built by Africans at heart, but the skin might have been very different. Is it possible to stop that maze and sometimes corruption? At a certain point, everybody's asking for the numbers of these school head teachers to create more of these centers of excellence. Why is it just the Future Subis and Namiriangos and not many of them? How difficult is it to have 30 Namagungas? Maybe some argue, do we need to bring back the Africans at heart who did it, or can't we do it ourselves?
Thank you so much, Samson. Samson, is true that we have a few good schools, in inverted commas, that everybody tries to make sure that they access. What is also true is that before, in the past, we actually had these centers of excellence across the country. You had of Bukedi College Kachonga, you had of Boroboro College, we had Ombachi, Kabalega, in Chigezi, Nyakashura, yes. Butobere. So they were all over. But over time, these schools went down.
Someone on social media here feels offended that we haven't mentioned the entire school.
I was about to mention that one. So we had these schools all over. And what used to happen is that, Alana coming from Mbale, he didn't have to struggle to go to Budo in order for him to qualify, to go to university. He would go to Nabumali and still do very well. And these schools also had a policy that they would make sure only they give like 60% of learners from that region, and the rest would come from other regions, basically also to promote patriotism and for other learners from different places to mingle, to mix and make friends from different parts of the country. Now, that one went down, and also what went down is the quality of learning. First of all, with the opening of private schools, most of these schools lost learners to the private schools. They lost teachers, and eventually they couldn't attract enough. If you went to some of them now, like Bukedi College, you would have 180 learners, and they can't sustain such a school. It's not UPE. So that is a challenge. So what are we trying to do? We are trying to go back and renovate, create a program for restarting these schools.
Okay.
And when we restart them, we also think that we shall have good teachers, good head teachers. For example, if you have retired from Mutare, how about giving you a contract to go and help us restart Bukedi College, Kachonga, or Boroboro High for a few years as you groom some other people. So yes, we think we can have new centers of excellence, but at the same time, even the centers of excellence which we have, which we claim to have now, also require actually rehabilitation and expansion.
Okay.
A school like King's College Budo was meant for maybe 400 learners, but now they are in 2,000.
Because everyone wants to be there.
Exactly. So for us to decongest them and also bring back to the glory they had, we have to expand them, but at the same time, they must be assisted by reopening and, renovating other centers of excellence across the country. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. And come back to you. There are people who have never understood why children who come, at least when I went to school, I think it took me up to around senior 6 to be cognizant of tribes. I studied with people from all over the country, and I, to be honest, didn't know what their tribes were. What is the purpose of filling in tribe of a learner? Does that help understand mathematics or English? Because, and this is why, at the dinner table, we don't know what people say about people's tribes. So it could be dangerous for a child to find out that A, B, C, and D is this tribe my dad was saying so and so about, or my mom. Can we come to the place where we protect our children from the nonsense that goes on in their homes where discrimination happens?
Thank you very much.
Or is that too much of a question to ask?
I think when you look at the registers of primary schools, to be specific, they have no provision for the tribe of the learner. I think it is in the Uganda police force where these issues are common practice, that whenever you go to report to police, one of the questions you must respond to is your tribe. I think as we reform the education system in this country, that is one area which we need to look at.
Okay.
We had hoped that the introduction of Kiswahili as a second official language would somehow help us to be an integrated group of people. But the teaching of Swahili is yet to take a root in our education system. But I think with time, when we have the 2 official languages, English and Kiswahili, and as the government continues to promote patriotism in both primary and secondary school, we shall realize that it is very important that we look at each other as Ugandans rather than looking at each other from the tribes where we come from.
Okay. And in some countries, every morning you sing the anthem, then I think in the United States, the Pledge of Allegiance. Do you think that there's a place for us to deliberately grow patriotism in our schools so that by the time somebody comes out of the school system, as far as primary 7, they will be Uganda first and anything else a distant second? Maybe yourself, Mr. Kakoza, did you want to respond to that? Do you want to respond to that?
I think we have tried to ensure that in all education institutions in this country, whenever there is an assembly, they sing the 3 stanzas of the national anthem, the East African anthem, but traditionally, people are still more attached to their tribes.
Can we break it?
It may not be easy to break because this is part of their culture. For example, in Uganda, if you go to any part of Uganda, when people are singing Ekitibwa kya Buganda, you see them singing with a lot of joy and commitment. When it comes to the national anthem, sometimes it is none of their business.
A very popular, I'm sorry to interrupt, a very popular educator in this region, by the time he died, so popular was he was called Mwalimu, decided that you can't have both. You must break one to create the other. And there's something he broke to create Ujamaa. And you will find a lot of Tanzanians who don't even care what their tribe is, whether they are higher or whatever else, but they are Tanzanian. Do you think that that would be a good price to pay for what we're trying to build? Or is it a difficult one to answer on live national television?
You see, you belong to a tribe before you claim to be a Ugandan.
Can I say I want to belong to a nation first? If I must, then the tribe will come second. Or am I a spoiled boy?
No, it is possible, but we need a lot of sensitization. We need also to look at our values as a country, what really unites us together. Why should we not focus on what brings us together as Ugandans rather than what divided us, so that we begin looking at tribes? So this will take some bit of time, but as more people get enlightened, as you can see in Kampala here, a tribe doesn't matter. What matters is what you do and how you relate with others. So as more people get enlightened, I think we shall reduce on this inward thinking of tribalism and look more at nationalism, where we can look at each other as Ugandans.
Dr. Gao, you seem to be interested in that conversation. Do you want to say something about it?
No, I think something is being done to make us one. There's patriotism in schools. Taking a lot of interest in that, actually. Sometimes they take it as a game because there is this and that in the training, and they enjoy doing it. But in the process, you see them becoming one. And to me, I think we just need to do more, a little more than we are doing. And people want to be a Ugandan much more than being a Kumam, which I am.
Oh, okay. Would you subscribe to this sort of decision that Mwalimu took, or is that too harsh for our context? Mwalimu Nyerere, I'm talking about here.
No, I think that's okay.
That's okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
The Kumams watching will wait for you after the show.
Yes, after I become a Ugandan.
Fantastic. PS, you wanted to say something on that?
I was saying through the curriculum reforms we're making, we shall be able to improve our patriotism and the way we look at our country, that took our country first, and any tribe or your tribe last. Because when we're, for example, doing the lower secondary curriculum, the issue of nationalism and the value system in our learners was very critical, and was mainly aimed at ensuring that children love their country and put their country first. Thank you.
The pay of teachers, and somewhere along the course of the way the president had their plight, he spoke of money. We're now talking 20 billion. 20 billion has become 20 billion. I think that's 2,000 million in a few times. Do you want to comment about the 20 billion, where we are with it and where we are not?
Thank you so much, Samson. Samson, my colleague will come in to supplement what I'm going to say.
Yes.
First of all, we want to thank His Excellency the President for extending that hand to our private, to our teachers in private institutions. When that money was given, it was given initially. The President said he's giving 20 billion, and then the question was, how shall we, divide the 20 billion? Because the number of teachers in private schools is more than 300,000. And when we had discussions, it was agreed this should be a revolving fund. And for a revolving fund to be managed, you must have good systems. And you must agree with the beneficiaries, on how it will be managed. So initially, when it had just been offered, we got a number of groups coming up to form their own circles. And those groups were not representative of the teachers across the country. And we knew one time we would be asked, how we came, to agree with such groups that were not representative. So we set about to have a representative group. And that could only be achieved through elections across the country for all districts to elect their own representatives to the national team that will eventually elect the apex body. That process was concluded on Friday. We had representatives from all districts, 143 districts. Each district sent 2 representatives. And this is the team now we are going to discuss with and agree how we shall manage this resource.
Okay.
The fund manager, because these are public resources and must be managed in accordance with the public finance management, laws. For example, the Public Finance Management Act. And if you are to procure a fund manager, you must use the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Assets Act regulations to get the fund manager. So we are now at that stage. I think, as you may have noted, now the teachers have kind of understood where we are.
Okay.
And we think very soon we shall conclude the process and the teachers will begin benefiting from this resource.
Yeah. Mr. Mulindwa, you were asked to supplement. Revolving funds have their own challenges. The moment they know that the source is generous, His Excellency, they say, okay, fine, we voted properly, we are being rewarded. Are people going to be jailed if the money doesn't revolve as it should? Because if it doesn't revolve, then some people may never get it.
Thank you, Mr. Kasumba, and that's exactly why we have delayed a bit.
Okay.
To make sure we fix all the gaps so that because like my PS has said, these are public funds. At the end of the day, tomorrow you are going to be tasked to account. I mean, if you don't manage it very, very, very well. But the President, His Excellency, was very categorical when he was giving this offer. He said, I'm putting 20 billions in the private school teachers circle. And by that it meant automatically that it has to be a revolving fund.
Okay.
What has created some kind of anxiety, there has been a gap in terms of information. Teachers didn't know the details about this money.
Okay.
But recently we have labored to make sure that we let them get to know by involving that teacher from Kanungu, a school in Kanungu, and a district in Kotido. They were all part of a decision last Friday to have their committee in place, which will be interfacing with the ministry and to see how the fund is going to be managed so that all teachers can benefit.
One of the issues that also comes up in education when people are discussing it is that we hear that there are scholarships somewhere in the ministry. and that those scholarships somehow get distributed. And there are quite a number of scholarships. I've also met kids who have scholarships from State House, I think. Then they also, you meet here people, I think during COVID we were interviewing learners from Uganda on scholarships in China. Is there a scholarship committee? And how does one apply, or does the ministry determine based on how you performed in which class? How are scholarships managed?
Thank you, Mr. Kasumba. The ministry has a department that is responsible for those scholarships. So what usually, okay, we have two types of scholarships. We have the government scholarships, which are allocated to universities where we get government-sponsored students to go. That one is managed by the department. We also have scholarships that are given to us by foreign agencies and embassies. And those ones, they normally come with their criteria.
Okay.
Yeah, so they will state what exactly they want, what type of people.
They'll probably say, we are interested in children of news anchors.
Exactly. And we're interested in these fields of study.
Okay.
So you just go by the...
Are they competitive that anybody, anywhere from any village can get them? Or is it based on your ability to know that they are there, then you go in for them?
No, they're usually advertised. Okay. They're usually advertised. People from all over apply, and then they go through a selection process and even interview, and then actually, at the end of it all, the decision for those foreign scholarships is not even with us. It's with the donor, the one who has given them. Because what we do is to nominate. Then they make a final decision. But even within here, it's competitive because people have to compete, and usually, of course, the best get it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So would I be right to understand that the ministry across the country nominates that for this particular season, the following across Uganda are good for scholarships, and in case somebody comes, maybe the first on the list or God knows where, they get them?
They must apply. It's
okay.
not, yeah, they must apply.
You apply, yes.
Yes,
okay.
Because we advertise them and people apply.
Where's the advertisement? Because one has to be sure that kids from across the country know that the call is on, then their parents apply.
Yeah, sometimes we put them on our notice boards, but sometimes we put them on the newspapers.
In the newspapers?
In the newspapers, yes.
Okay, we want to believe that somehow all parents get access to these newspapers. Maybe still on scholarships. Sometimes I understand that scholarships have to be competitive, especially when it comes to university students. But sometimes when you look at the way our education is structured, is that it is children within Kampala and Wakiso who have a certain quality of education. And because that's the quality of education, they'll have also a certain quality of teacher and a certain quality of performance. And if they don't have it, they will have coaching. And in the end, in my opinion, and might be wrong, those who actually don't need the scholarships, who can actually pay, end up getting them. And then it leaves parents with an aftertaste, especially those outside Kampala and Wakiso. It's a messy one to deal with, but is there a place to rethink this?
Yes, that's why there is what we call the quota system. There is at least, out of the 4,000 scholarships that are given by government, 3,000 are competed for nationally, but the other 1,000 are selective. About 900 are under district quota. So those are distributed to the districts to cater for such children who cannot access like the way you've described.
Okay.
Then we have also some 40 slots for sportsmen, those who excel in the sports.
Good.
And then we also have about 80 spaces for the special needs.
Okay.
Yeah, so there is a lot.
Okay, maybe I'll have a question, but that will be the last one. I'm left with about 14 minutes. I want to squeeze in a question that is on social media on special needs, but as well, coming out of COVID, parents are pressed financially. Some have never gotten back to work. Now, proprietors of education institutions have also not been making money for a very long time. You know where that's going to go in terms of school fees. Is there a way to regulate school fees? And in some cases, school fees go up every term. and there's nowhere to appeal. If you don't want, you go. And while you're complaining, somebody pays for 2 years. Then you feel like the problem is with you, not the other person. Can we regulate school fees? These are open.
Thank you, Mr. Kasumba. This is a question I think you didn't deserve to leave out, because our viewers out there want to hear it from us.
Yes.
And I want to correct you, because you said and there's nowhere you can go, you can appeal. There is a ministry in charge, and which is regulating fees in schools.
Okay.
We have tried over time to see how we regulate fees, but then we need to be, I think we need to know that we have two tiers. We have schools, for example, let me talk about, first of all, government schools, which are charging fees. Then we have another set or category which is not supposed to charge, USA. Then we have the private schools. The law is very clear. The ministry is supposed to regulate. But we regulate through, say, bodies like, I hope you have ever heard of school management committees,
yes,
boards of governors. These do it.
Those are in government schools. In private schools, they evaporate.
No, they are there.
They're
supposed to
be. They're
be
just
there.
quiet.
Yeah.
I agree. They're supposed to be there.
They're supposed to be there. Yeah, some are not really functional. But we have
I've never been called to a PTA meeting.
In private schools?
In a private school where
yes,
my learners go.
Yes, where you take
I think it's supposed to be there.
Yeah, they're supposed to be there. But then through those bodies, we are supposed to regulate fees by tasking those bodies to, first of all, come up with the budgets.
Okay.
Which budgets come up with the fees proposals. But when these budgets are done, they have to come to us and we approve the budgets. So in a way, we are doing what? We are regulating. But over time, we have realized some of our schools, like you rightly mentioned, some of the private schools, of course, do not comply to our directives or regulations. And what are we doing? Again, going by the law, we are now thinking of coming out with the regulations, because the law gives us that kind of mandate to regulate. So we are coming up with the regulations, and we hope the fees will be regulated once those regulations come out.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean we have not had mechanisms by which we regulate fees. We send circulars, we send guidelines. Like if you bothered to look at the guidelines we sent when children were coming back, we are very clear on this fees issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when the learner is sent out of class, the school fees eventually comes and the school gets the whole sum, but the learner has missed days. That's a very complex one. Doc, you want to respond?
Thank you, Samson. I think proprietors of private schools are simply exploiting the ignorance of parents and guardians.
Okay. Bring the parents to light now, national television.
As the director said, the Minister of Education and Sports is in charge. It has the function to regulate education services in this country. So where the parents feel oppressed, they have the right to appeal to the permanent secretary in writing. And the permanent secretary has issued several circulars to head teachers, schools and institutions, giving guidance on the issue of school fees, to the effect that public secondary schools are supposed to seek permission from the permanent secretary before they increase school fees.
Okay.
And the only way we can get feedback from the stakeholders is by way of reports.
Okay.
Communicating to us. Then we get to know that there's a problem, then we can always handle that problem.
Okay. I'd like to float a question here on social media. Is there a way you can sneak in this? Somebody was asking, how has the sector facilitated the effective and successful learning of children with special needs? And there are a few special needs teachers, especially in rural and remote areas, and some parents end up giving up on these children. Does somebody want to respond to that?
Thank you very much, Samson. Samson, the department, the ministry has a fully fledged department of special needs education. And that is very, very critical because it means that we recognize that we have children with special needs, and these children must be provided for. Because in the sector, we believe in access, equal access for all our children. Okay. We call it inclusiveness. And we have come up with an inclusive policy in education. And it's basically supposed to provide for all learners, and especially learners with special needs. So how have we provided for them? First of all, it's true, when we were distributing materials during the lockdown, initially, we didn't provide for learners with special needs. But when we had a prolonged lockdown and were developing materials now to cover the entire syllabus, we did provide materials for learners with special needs, and they have been reproduced and they are under now distribution. Yeah. Secondly, how have we provided for other learners outside the lockdown period? We have schools in different parts of the country that provide education for learners with a disability. We have, for example, Mbale, School for the Deaf. We have Wachiso, School for the Deaf, and others. And we plan to open more. In these schools and outside these schools, we also provide facilities for learners with special needs. For example, we have been providing hearing aids to learners with hearing impairment, and we have also provided, they are called Braille machines for learners with defective eyesight. So we are providing for learners with special needs.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to give you a minute each. I didn't realize 2 hours was spent. But listening to what you have been saying, yes, very briefly.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Kasumba. I just wanted to add on to what my permanent secretary was talking about special needs. Now, in line with the policy of inclusive provision of education and sports, for the sports, from the year 2012, we have made sure that sports competitions for primary schools, we have started with primary, are inclusive. Okay. So all districts that participate in national championships must come with a team of special needs learners. Okay. So we want to take it up to the next level of secondary school and continue with ensuring that special needs learners are involved in our sports activities.
Listening to all of you, I cannot be more excited about Ugandan education and all. But I also feel for you because I have seen members of cabinet taking their children to international schools, meaning that those who cook are eating at the neighbors. I'm not so sure who regulates these international schools here, but maybe that's a topic for another day. For now, if you want to put it in your concluding remarks, addressing who addresses and who is responsible for what is being provided in these international schools. Maybe we'll have another show on that. But for now, I'm left with just a few minutes to give each one of you a minute to do your conclusion. And then, because everybody has been saying, my PS, our PS will come last. So we'll begin here, and then our PS will come last. We'll begin
thank
with
you very much, Samson, and all our viewers who have stayed on up to midnight. One last word I would like to say is that as an education system and sector, we are not where we want to be, but we are not where we were. We are progressing systematically, and soon we shall have quality education for all our learners. And I want you to establish confidence in your public schools so that you don't strive and sell off what you have to go to a private school when you have a school next door.
Doc, thank you very much. One of the lessons I've learned from you, and I hope our viewers did as well, is the difference between couldn't and couldn't. That came out very well. Dr. Egao, your concluding remarks.
Thank you very much, Samson. The higher education sector is undergoing a lot of reforms in teacher education, in BTVET, and also in higher education. We are working towards making now a higher education policy as well. So I just want the public to be prepared for reforms and changes.
Thank you very much. Concluding remarks. Summary. You learnt your summary very well. Doc, you want to come in as well?
Thank you very much, viewers. I want to say that the provision of education services in this country is a shared responsibility. So let us join hands to ensure that our children have access to education, a more so quality education.
And when you talk of shared responsibility, you also include the male parent. They tend to forget. Mr. Mulindwa.
Thank you, Mr. Kasumba. I want to reassure our parents that our learners will not lose anything. We have come up with a strategy on the recovery of lost time. So our learners will not lose what they missed. That's very important for our parents to pick.
Each time you speak, Mr. Mulindwa, I see you in a short-sleeve shirt with a tie in a secondary school teaching either chemistry or mathematics and your students cutting your class. But that is something for another matter. Let's get the two gentlemen here also concluding.
Thank you very much, Samson. As a country, we have an opportunity to participate in numerous policy and legal reforms that are meant to take our education system from where it is to where we want it to be. And our minister has constituted an education review commission that will, among others, review all those issues. Which language can we adopt? What value system? What is the philosophy of education? How should we look at our teachers? Among others. So we think we are in the right direction, and only the support of the media and the civil society and all stakeholders would be missing in at this opportunity. So we are ready for serious reforms to make our education system better. Thank you.
Thank you. And there was a time when PE was a must in education institutions. I think that's the case, still the case. Your concluding remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Kasumba. PE is compulsory now at secondary schools at the lower secondary school level, beginning last year, under the new lower curriculum, secondary school curriculum. But it is still a must in primary schools, and so PE is still critical in education. But in concluding, I would like to say that we had set out in 2012 with a physical education and sports subsector vision of sports made in Uganda. And this, to us, means our athletes will train in Uganda, be trained by Ugandan coaches, using Ugandan facilities, and win world records coming straight from Uganda. For now, we are saying world records made in Teriet Kapchorwa.
Okay.
So we want to continue with this. And also, I would like to encourage parents to support their children's talent, not only in sports, but in all other extracurricular activities, sports, music, dance, drama, and whatever talent they have, they should support. I'm urging them in addition to the education they get in schools.
I've got an adopted child that is very good with eating. They have a special talent. So now from you, I'm going to support that talent to make sure that it succeeds. Let's now get to our PS and his final remarks.
Thank you so much, Samson. Samson, first of all, we want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to come here. We want to say that as a sector, we are having a number of reforms that are transforming the way we do teaching and learning in this country. In primary subsector, we are doing early grade reading, and this is helping us to, you see, I'm saying this here because, Samson, we didn't get a chance to say what we have achieved, because we have made quite a number of achievements, and then we have also where we are headed. That is really. So I want to say we are doing early grade reading, and it's mainly intended to improve, to give us basics, because we know the foundation of any education is literacy and numeracy in this country. So we are doing early grade reading, and we expect that we have already covered 104 districts, and we expect to cover those that are remaining, about 30 or so. when their lithography is done. So we are making tremendous progress in primary, in secondary. We are very excited about the reforms we are doing under TVET, especially based on our new policy, TVET policy, which was passed recently, that we will make TVET the choice of first option in this country. We'll skill Ugandans for the industries that are coming and the industries that have been here, and train our people, give them skills that will enable them to work both within and without, so that we don't have to export, unskilled labor. If we have to export, we should export people who have skills. We expect major reforms in higher education, and higher education will now, as much as possible, connect universities, research, and the industry, so that what comes out, again, can serve, first of all, this country, before it serves those outside this country. Lastly, COVID has not left us the same. When we closed down, we struggled to find our feet. How can we keep our learners learning? So this ministry is coming up with a digital agenda that will help us to continue learning, even when you have instances of like COVID. So, Samson, we want to thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. We want to assure this country that education has a future, and we are committed as a sector with our leadership, with our political leadership, to deliver education in this country. Thank you very much.
And I would like to thank you all. There is a suggestion here on the issue of teachers' fund. Let teachers in each district form a circle. The chairperson represents the circle at national level. And also on scholarships, why don't they use radio and television? How many people in Uganda access newspapers? I'm Dr. Wilberforce Tindiewa, Cavendish University. And as well, one of the major concerns I still have is that because of the way private education is structured, we are shrinking spaces in which at a very early age, the children of the haves and the children of the have-nots share spaces in school. When I was in school, I was in the same class with the children of the Prime Minister, even when I came from God knows where. For as long as we have a nation of strangers, where the haves and have-nots don't meet in class, where we are separated in society depending on what our parents can afford to pay for, we will raise a nation of strangers. But from what I can see from your faces, it is a concern, and I've never been more sure that you're doing something about it. I hope from tonight we will convince members of cabinet who have been taking their children to private international schools that Uganda has better education than what Cambridge does offer. It is easier said than done. But if the moderator studied on Ugandan education all the way out, then maybe that is convincing, especially so when he is an English news anchor in English. Good night. If you want, you can send me something. And I'm talking about a book to read. See you soon.
Some argue that education is the heartbeat of Uganda's future. Others, well, that it is simply life, that education is the only way to ensure that tomorrow's generations are well nurtured. From school conditions across the country all the way to scholarships and more, Uganda's Ministry of Education and Sports is placed under the spotlight, under the theme Progress of Uganda's Education. Panelists will include Permanent Secretary Alex Kakoza, Director Education Standards Dr. Kedres Turiagenda, Director Basic and Secondary Education Ismail Mulindwa, Commissioner Basic Education Dr. Cleophas Mugenyi, and Director Higher Technical Vocational Education and Training Dr. Jen Egao. Hosted by Samson Kasumba. This Monday, 22nd March 2021 at 10 p.m. Spotlight UG, live on UBC Television.
It is intellectually engaging.
Court does not sit to waste its time. If you have no defense, it chases you. It is a ruling